Hello, all theater lovers, both out and proud and on the DL. Welcome to Broadway Breakdown, a podcast discussing the history and legacy of American theater's most exclusive address, Broadway. This series is called Underestimated, and it is covering shows that either had mild success when they first premiered on Broadway or no success at all, but have since gone on to have a long and healthy life. I am your host, Matt Koplik, the least famous and most opinionated of all the Broadway podcast hosts, and with me today is a lyricist, composer, librettist, singer-songwriter, a million opinions. However, you probably best know him from the last time he was on this podcast, over a year ago. What is time? Wow. Please welcome back you're too old now to be a wunderkind, but back in the day, a wunderkind. Preston Max Allen. Hi, Preston.
I love starting this with "now you're old." That's my favorite way a podcast has ever been started.
No matter how old you get, I'm older than you, so just know that.
No. I love it. I do love it.
Well, I think when I first met you, you were 22 or something, and I just remember being like, "Who's this person?"
I've been working for a while.
Yeah, I'm like, "Who's this person who has all the bops in their head, all the lyrics in their mind?" I'm like, I don't like this person. They're too talented for my liking.
I purged a lot of that. A lot of that's out of the system now.
That happened in 2020. COVID got you good, and now all the talent is gone. Preston, what motherfucking tucking musical are we talking about today?
We are talking about The Light of My Life, Carrie the musical. One of the only things tethering me to this mortal coil.
Well, and you are such a wonderful person to have on for this podcast, for this episode, because Preston, you may or may not have written a musical related to this.
I did. Truly only because I couldn't get there first. I wanted to wedge my way into the Carrie canon somehow. So I made a musical quote unquote parody of The Rage Carrie 2, which is Carrie's legitimate sequel.
Yes, it is.
To the 1976 film Carrie, for better or worse, but a most beloved property to me. So that's my baby.
And honestly, it's my favorite thing you've written. Thank you. I loved it so much.
Me too. I'm really proud of it.
As well, you should be.
You can say that.
I'm a longtime Tiger stan. I've been following Tigers forever. Although I don't know if you remember this. At one point, I was doing an Ask Me Anything on Instagram, and someone asked me my opinion on We Are the Tigers, and I said I will never forget where I was when Caitlin Frank looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Everybody Wants to Be Her" has been cut, and I said, "Why is the world so dark?"
Oh, yeah. No, I remember that because I remember being like, that is a safe way to comment on your thoughts on Tigers. A divisive show.
Sure.
As well. I read some of the reviews of Carrie and I went, oh, we're bonded with some of the ways people have spoken.
Listen, We Are the Tigers is not for everyone. It's a very specific kind of show. There's so much, though, that has to be admired about it. First of all, as I've said before, you write bops. I don't like someone could say, hey, Preston, write me an esoteric musical with really complex and what's the word I'm looking for? Dissonant melodies. And you'd be like, sure thing. And then you come in and you'd be like, I'm sorry, guys, I wrote a score full of bops again. I don't know what happened. I swear I tried to write everything in minor keys and it's just all really like toe tappy and amazing. I'm sorry.
I think that's because I learned how to play guitar and I write on guitar from Green Day's American Idiot. So no matter what, the gravitational pull of my work is always going to be pop punk from 1995 to 2008.
And we are so very, very grateful. But yes, to say that I think Carrie 2 is your best work I say that highly. But I remember the 54 Below concert and I was like, I'm sorry, why isn't this out and about? Like we did a revival of Carrie, but we're not doing a one production of Carrie 2.
I will tell you. Well, in Chicago, they actually did a production at Underscore Theater, and we got nominated for Best New Musical for a Jeff Award, which in Chicago, everyone listening is like, "Oh, a Jeff," and I'm like, "Yes, a Jeff." It's very helpful for me.
I love these regional award names.
Get ready because I was nominated for a Betty Buckley in my youth, which I'm sure
there's a Betty Buckley Award.
There is. It's the pipeline to the Jimmy's in the DFW area in Texas because Betty Buckley's from. I think from Fort Worth.
Oh, yeah. Betty Lynn is from Texas. You better believe she'll tell you all the time.
Betty Buckley. I was nominated for playing Alona Ritter, and she loves me.
We love to see it, but like, how long has the Betty Buckley Award been around?
A while, but it wasn't. I mean, the Jimmy's came like later. So when I was nominated, there wasn't even a Jimmy's, but I think the next year actually. Either the next year or the year after they kind of.
So when you were nominated, it was the top echelon you could be nominated for.
Yes, although I do want to say it is possible the Jimmy's existed before I thought, and we just like weren't televised or like a very big deal. I think I might have learned that, but I also might have made that up. Like my favorite thing that I recently learned I made up and was telling people was true, just with my full chest, was that I really thought Michelle Branch's Everywhere was secretly about Jesus. And it turns out I made that's not a real fact. I made that up. I apologize to anyone who I told Everywhere was potentially a Christian rock song. It's, I think, pretty a thing I fabricated.
Betty Lynn Buckley, songs about Jesus. We are skirting around the real topic here, which is Carrie the musical.
Well, not with Betty Buckley. We're sitting right in the pocket.
No, but songs about Jesus. Saying like we should just dive right into it because we keep on just being like, okay, here are things related to the show, but not actually talking about the goddamn
you were gonna
show.
Be like, who's Betty Buckley? I was like, Matt, did you hit your head shortly before?
I'm sorry. How long have we known each other? And you thought I didn't know who Betty Buckley was?
I knew you know.
Betty Lynn. All the gays call her Betty Lynn. So, Preston, what is your history with Carrie the musical?
Okay, so the reality and the scope, and this is why I had to do a good amount of research for this actually, is that I love Carrie like since 6th grade, since I read the book. And a lot of my involvement with Carrie, like in my own life, not in professionally in any way other than Carrie too, is just tracking all the different like adaptations and the choices that they make and how it has interacted with like time and, you know, society and politics and like, and so how people guide that story through time. And in my brain, I go, here's what I would do differently. But I get a lot of I don't know, I get a lot of joy from tracking that story because it's just so wildly adapted across decades now. And so I think it was the first horror book I read in 6th grade. And then I saw the movie, probably one of the first horror movies I saw. I love that movie. I love 76. And then I've seen all the everything after. And the musical has always kind of just been wrapped up in that because obviously it was an intersection of me loving Carrie and horror and musicals. But I didn't I don't know. I've always been super into the musical, but like in a way that is very sitting outside of it and like watching me watch the musical. I don't know. Like,
wait, which version of the musical? The OG 80s crazy one or the one that tried to be more like serious and Spring Awakening?
Yeah, as a Spring Awakening kid, 2012 was on my radar foremost for a long time, honestly, until 2020 when I really had time to sit with these bootlegs. And I was doing this thing where I would like travel to see different productions of Carrie. So I didn't see the 2012 one. I saw the bootleg, but I wasn't here, so I just missed it. But like, you know, that's what I was like, that's the product of what I was studying. It was like the American Idiot age was like the same thing. So I was like, oh, look at this.
Yeah, no, we were in the pocket with that at the time.
Yeah. And now knowing the history, I'm able to like understand it. I wish I'd known before I watched it because it really informs so much of how I feel about it. And it is tricky to talk about because it's like my dream to adapt this in any form. I'd love to adapt the musical into a film, but I think primarily I'd love to make it like a 4-part HBO Max miniseries, which isn't totally out of the question like for the future of my career. So I thought about how I was going to talk about like my thoughts on the show for this. And I was like, everything I say, even if critique, is meant with like love, and it's looking at it respectfully. It's looking at it with some questions. It's looking at it with some comments and concerns, but from a place of love and always wanting to kind of seek what's best for the property. So yeah, so then I would travel to see different productions of it. Like we went to see Signature's production, my friends and I, in 2014, I think, when they did it in DC. We saw that one. And then when I was doing Tigers in LA, we saw that big immersive one. So I was always kind of trying to see these productions. And I think it's not particularly because the content of the show speaks to my soul. I just like love watching it. I love how people interpret these larger than life roles across, like my friend and I in 2020 were trying to watch every available YouTube like recording, which are a lot of high school and college productions. And like,
oh boy.
I enjoy those like as much as I enjoy the like big professional ones, because I just love how performers interpret these massive iconic roles and how they put themselves in ways where you can kind of tell like that they're really taking it cathartically and like I don't know, I think there's something very unique about how this is performed. But in the last couple years since I saw it, I am an 88 stan. My thoughts connect back to how a lot more was working in that one for me.
We will definitely get into all of this, because so I think when talking about Carrie the musical, it's very important to discuss the 88 version, because that's the one that is legendary in the theater community, and so much so that they did the revisal, and now the revisal is what is produced all over the world and what a lot of younger fans know. So obviously we have to talk about that as well, but we also do have to talk about the book and the 1976 movie, because the 76 movie, it's so impossible to separate the property from that adaptation. It's just so well known, and I would argue probably to this day still the best adaptation of the book. Obviously they take liberties, as you do with anything, but I think that in terms of dramatizing that story, they do the best job. And I'm also including the made for TV movie that was supposed to be the launching pad for a series, and then the remake with Chloe Grace Moritz. A lot of versions of Carrie. I
will say, in defense of 2001, that TV movie, even though it has the most, how could you possibly, even though I know why they did it, but we won't spoil it yet. It's actually like, they try to put stuff in the book from the book that wasn't in 76. Like they try to put a lot of the lore back. And I really respect that they're trying to get closer to the book. But yeah, nothing is the 76. But I saw what they were going for right until the end. And then I went, no,
well,
can't go for that.
I will say, Stephen King has actually said that he prefers the 76 movie to his own book. So anytime people have, so like when they did the musical, and then when they were remaking the movie, both in 2001, 2002, and 2014, he was like, why would you do that? The original movie is just so good. It's better than what I wrote. Like he even prefers the ending of the movie with the ending that he wrote. But there's a lot about the book that I think is really fantastic. And I think more what he's saying is, the things that the 76 movie doesn't include from the book is stuff that like wouldn't necessarily translate as we see in later adaptations. Like it's great that they're trying, but you are like, oh, I see why this was cut. Like it kind of slows down the momentum.
I agree with you, Ari, the 76 movie and the relationship to the book. I think the book to me more informs my questions about the adaptation of the musical, and like choices that were made tonally and like structurally for the musical, that the book is such an incredible supplemental piece. We'll talk about this, I imagine, later.
Yes, we'll talk about all of it. So let me talk about my...
guide me, yes.
Well, guide? I'm sorry. Did you think there was structure to this podcast since the last
I'm going to try to talk about everything at once all the time.
Preston, wait, I have not added structure to this podcast. In fact, any structure that was on when you last were on, I threw out. And I said, we're just going to go where we go.
Good.
We're going to go where we go.
Like, not yet, Preston.
Okay. Well, I think the most commonly said phrase on this podcast by anyone, myself and guests, is "we'll get to it," but and then,
okay, great,
because we always get to it. But I mean, I've already recorded the sideshow episode with me and Adam, but I think Adam and I both say it like 90 times, like, we'll get to it, and we do. We do get to all the things, but we get ahead of ourselves. Anyway, my history with Carrie, similar to yours, I knew of the movie first. I grew up in a musical theater and movie household. And I knew of the movie. It was a VHS cover that scared the bejesus out of me, because you had Sissy Spacek on the front. On one side, she's all done up in her prom getup, holding the flowers, the tiara, looking amazing. And then next to it is a picture of her totally drenched in what I now know is pig's blood. At the time, I was like, the fuck? And so I was like, I didn't know what was going on. And then I would sometimes see pictures of her in that get up in like different movie books, and it just scared the crap out of me. And then the two movies that made me go, maybe I should watch this, were Scream, when Billy Loomis licks his fingers and he says corn syrup, same thing they use for pig's blood and Carrie. And I went, maybe I should watch this movie. Then the movie Superstar with Molly Shannon. For anyone who's ever seen that movie, Mary Catherine Gallagher, her character, has a day job at a video rental store, and her job is to rewind all the unrewound movies. So she's seen like hundreds of movies, but always in reverse because she has to rewind them all. And she says the one that she watches the most is Carrie with Sissy Spacek. Anyway, but that's how I knew the movie first. Then I watched the movie, loved the movie, thought it was wild, but like so captivating. And I loved the sound of it and the look of it, because it's also beautifully shot. It's like big, bold, bright colors with like a gloss on the whole thing. Like the movie's a painting. And then I read the book, which is, the movie is faithful to an extent, but the movie cuts some stuff and they tweak certain characters, make some characters nicer, some characters meaner, some characters more comedic than others. Like in the book, a lot of these characters are full-blown sociopaths. Like Chris, the character of Chris Hargensen, is a budding sociopath in the book. Like she's beautiful, she's popular, she's everything, but like her hatred of Carrie White, it doesn't just stem from the fact that Carrie is weird and then like she gets her prom privileges revoked. It comes from the fact that like Chris is going to murder someone one day. Like it's just a matter of time. She's had like a record of bullying with other girls, including in the book, she put a firecracker in a girl's shoe simply because the girl had a hair lip. It's a whole thing. And you're like, Jesus fucking Christ. So you watch all the movies and then you even see the show, and it's not the same type of Chris. She's mostly just like a bitchy popular girl. Anyway, so I read the book, really liked the book. And then in middle school, I was made aware of the musical. I had a friend whose father was like super into flops, and he used to see all the flops he could. And he was telling me about Carrie, and he just kept on talking about the staircase. Oh, the staircase, the staircase. And I'm thinking like, this rickety staircase that goes from like stage right to stage left. I'm like, oh, I guess something was interesting about this staircase. And then everyone take a shot. I went to Stage Door Manor Performing Arts Center, where my friend Lucas lent me his copy of the book Not Since Carrie, where it is book ended with the first Broadway preview of Carrie and the audience reaction and what's going on stage, and then the prologue, epilogue, which is the whole journey of Carrie and then sort of the fallout of it. And he talks about this giant white staircase that comes from the ceiling, drops onto the stage, and just covers the entire stage and looks like a white staircase to heaven or somewhere. It's never made explicitly clear, with poor Lindsay Haley covered in pig's blood, just making a mess all over the thing.
I love how they were like, we need a piece of something to come down from the ceiling and be important. And there's so many opportunities like in the body of the show. Like when you said rickety staircase, I was like, oh my gosh, to like the prayer closet, like something that would have made sense. Or like the prayer closet is like a set it could have piece.
Instead she goes into the cellar. We never see her, whatever. But yeah, I eventually got to watch a bootleg of the show because Stage Door did it. Stage Door was the first place to do a production of Carrie after the original Broadway production, simply because Jeff Murphy, who everyone will know the name of because of the Smile episode, literally wrote down all the dialogue and lyrics from an audio bootleg and then gave the audio to a music director at Stage Door, who then had to transcribe all the music from just listening to it.
But the team approved that production, didn't they? Weren't the team?
Like, I think they came to see it, and I think they didn't shut it down. But it was. They were like, oh yes, now everyone can do Carrie. They were just like,
something I was watching. They were like really happy to see kids do it. They were like, seeing teenagers do it felt really right.
And I think they were nervous. Well, they were nervous when they heard about it that it was going to be sort of a parody spoof production. Like they were they were going to do it to like make fun of the show. But Jeff legitimately loved the show, and so they did it fully straight. And it was like a whole to do. And apparently, it was totally full. They had to like get people standing in the hallways of the theater because people who weren't just campers, like Carrie fans, came out to see it, and it was a whole thing. And then I know Emerson College, my other alma mater, whoop whoop, also did an illegal production of it in the early 2000s.
I watched that last night. First of all, the stage door manner, the Margaret White is really good. I love like when teen Margaret Whites are somehow possessed with the spirit of this.
Oh yeah.
Old
I remember being at stage door and knowing that the Margaret and the Carrie were like two stage door legends. The girl who played girl who played Carrie White, also like she played Violet in Sideshow. She played Mrs. Walker in Tommy. She played Charity in Sweet Charity. Like she just played all the leads, just all of them.
Every other kid is like, I'm not even gonna try. No, I mean, she's very good. I'm only calling out Margaret White because like Carrie, I kind of more expect a teen to lock and load that role. But the Emerson one's great because they just made bold choices and they just put movie stuff back in.
Yeah, like why not?
They cut songs and like put scenes from the movie in, and it really worked in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, so now we come to the origin of this musical, Preston.
Yes.
So I don't know if you know this, but the book of the stage musical Carrie is written by one Lawrence D. Cohen, Larry Cohen, as some call him.
Are you asking me if I know this?
Yes, I'm assuming you do.
What if I didn't know that and I'd come on this? I do know that.
Yes. Well, for the listeners out there who don't know, Lawrence D. Cohen wrote a screenplay. And what was that screenplay, Preston?
It was 1976 Carrie adaptation.
Yes, it was, which is a really good screenplay. But the whole reason of Carrie coming to be is the songwriting duo of Michael Gore and Dean Pitchford, who had written all the songs for the movie Fame. And Dean Pitchford used to be a Broadway actor and, contributed lyrics to other stuff. I think he co-wrote the screenplay for Footloose. I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
Definitely did songs on Footloose.
The two of them went to go see a production of the opera Lulu at the Met. And they came out and Gore said to Pitchford on their walk home from the opera, if Berg were alive today, this is Alban Berg. They said, if Alban Berg were alive today, he would do an opera of Carrie. And they went, huh. And so then they teamed up with Lawrence Cohen, who did the screenplay, and they worked on the first act of the musical, did a workshop of it in 1984 with Annie Golden, Maureen McGovern, Liz fucking Calloway, which I love her vocals on Do Me a Favor. She's not right for Chris, but I just love her vocals because she's mixing up a storm.
I haven't heard that one yet. I listened to Annie Golden do Carrie, which was married to that other song I had not heard yet. That was something about heart. My heart is something. Oh my God.
Yeah. It's like the first song of the in the workshop that they cut. Right? It's right before what eventually will be In, but it's called Ain't It a Bitch.
Yeah, which was a good. Oh no, I can't even get in my feelings about In right now. Cutting Ain't It a Bitch, I think was a good. But
yeah, I'm saying In is a 20-minute conversation, Preston. We'll get to
In
that.
is a long conversation, and I've devil's advocated myself left and right about that song. No, but Liz Calloway is like Journey to the Past defines 0.7% of my personality. So
so like you have Liz Calloway, who's got this beautiful, silky smooth singing voice, can belt, but mostly does a really gorgeous mix. It's very light and feathery, not who you expect for Chris Harkinson, especially not the Chris Harkinson of the book, not the Chris Harkinson of the first movie. And so you have her trying to have some grit to it, but she's just too Liz Calloway. So she has like, there's something that Carrie White will just have to learn. And she tries to like lean into it, but she's mostly just under. And then she does she's gonna get burned, but she doesn't have the note belted. It's mixed and it sounds beautiful, but it's not Chris. So
there's nothing more beautiful than screwing Carrie White over.
There's nothing more beautiful than a sociopath who intends to kill some pigs later on. Like it's just like she's gonna get burned. And
musical Chris is more like learning that her like whims and her impulses have consequences rather than like I am purely trying to like hurt people. So I guess there's a little more leeway for that energy than
but it's just an interesting listen, and then it's very closely following the screenplay to the point that like there are scenes that are just directly lifted from exactly, but like also some rough song transitions, like for example the Do Me a Favor, it's like oh hey Tommy, how's it going? Oh, pretty good, thanks. Hey Sue, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay. Actually not Tommy, lately I've just not been feeling right. I'm like there is a lot of finessing that needs to happen, but the story they like to tell, because I don't know if you know this, Preston, they also did a Stars in the House reunion with Seth Rudetsky. I
watched that last night.
It's an interesting reunion. It's the writers and then a lot of the original company, and it's mostly taken over by the writers and Betty Buckley. Like everyone else doesn't get a lot to talk about. So I think it's very telling that Charlotte Demoise and Sally Ann Triplett don't get a lot of opportunities to speak because their experience with the show and their experience with audience reaction is very different from like what Betty Buckley and Lindsay Haley had.
Because they had like famously somewhat like they had a different show. Like everyone in that show kind of looks at it as like the, you know, Margaret Carey show and then the high school show.
Yeah. And the writers basically put all the blame on the show's failure on the director. And I'm like, listen, I will get to exactly why they said this in a second. Like the director has a lot of things that he has to answer for. The director of the original production is Terry Hands. However, the director did not sit down and force their hands to write the song Out for Blood. He did not did not whisper the lyrics of In into Dean Pitchford's ear and go, these are the lyrics I want.
They wrote that. Fuzzed my mic out in defense of Out for Blood. Out for Blood. Look at Out for Blood is a bop. I want it back.
There's so many bops in the show. And in fact, I would argue the show is a great example of like the problem when sometimes your score is filled with bops when they're not really dramatically should be there. But
yes. I'll just say what replaced them didn't necessarily compel me that they should be gone sometimes.
Yeah, there's I have thoughts on the revisal, I should say, and we'll get into all of it. I swear, guys, when I say we'll get to it, I truly mean it because we always do. We always
Cracker
do.
Jack.
How dare you speak the word Cracker Jack on this podcast?
Oh my God, I'll scream the word Cracker Jack. I read this episode finally.
This episode is Cracker Jack Erasure. No, this is Cracker Jack Erasure. We do not discuss the song that Out for Blood replaced. How dare you? But yeah, they do the first act, they do a workshop with all these people, and in their mind goes extremely well. Oh, the other thing is when they approached Stephen King if they could make a musical of it around like 82, 83, King was originally hesitant, but then he said, well, I guess if they can make a musical out of an Argentinian dictator and a vengeful barber, why not, Carrie? So he's like, go for it, go see what you can do. So they do the first act. And they do get Barry and Fran Weisler to sign on as producers, who are not like powerhouses yet, but they are successful Broadway producers at this point. They've done a couple of shows that have made some money. They first approached Mike Nichols to direct it, and Mike Nichols listens to the audio of the workshop. He goes, it's great. I'm not going to do it. And apparently the words he said was, I watched the movie. I didn't want her to go to prom then. I'm listening to this now. I don't want her to go to prom now. I'm like, yeah, none of us want her to go to prom because we know what's going to happen.
Yeah. That's when horror is just not for you.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's fair. Yeah. And to Mike Nichols' credit, he recognized it wasn't for him. They then go to Bob Fosse, who says to them that he really wanted to make it a dance musical. And they're like, absolutely not. Prophetic words. And yeah, apparently they then go through like a bunch of different major directors because they reached out to the power agent Sam Cohn, who gives them like Nora Ephron and Zeffirelli and all these people. And then finally they get to Terry Hands, who is the new sole artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company after having been co-artistic director with Trevor Nunn for a few years. And Trevor Nunn had just had a huge hit with Les Miserables, and that made a lot of money for Royal Shakespeare Company. So Terry Hands is like, I need to make my mark now.
I need us to pause because this really hit me during this research session that Carrie is so linked to Les Mis, and it was an attempt at a follow-up to Les Mis, and I just didn't quite realize that. Yeah, and it really just, I'm not sure joy is it was just, it felt like a moment of history that I'd missed that was very secretly very important to me to put together.
Well, so what we have here is it's the tail end of the 80s. So while Carrie is being written, but more importantly, while it's getting put up, it's like we're in the height of the mega musical. We've got Cats and Les Mis just dominating the world. Phantom has just opened on the West End and is now coming to Broadway and dominating. And so there's this pressure from everyone of like, well, we all got to go big. We all got to go broke. And you see, I would argue it was worse on the West End because arguably the British are worse at musicals than we are. They get it right sometimes. They get it right sometimes.
I won't sign off on that statement, but I respect it.
It's a very American ideal to think that of like because Americans technically created the musical and we have had a longer history with it. I would say that more British musicals of the last 20 years have worked than not. However, the 80s and 90s, I would argue it was a bit more of a fluke because shows would do really well over there and then come here and like only 1 out of every 5 actually succeeded. Because we think of like Cats, Les Mis, Phantom, and Miss Saigon like taking over the world, and they did, but then we also forget about like the Chesses, the Starlight Expresses that ran for only a year and a half here and like lost all of its money, or Aspects of Love, just like shows that just exactly. Preston just did a whole over my head thing. Just shows that did well on the West End and then barely made a blip here. Yeah. And you can really see that as with each musical that did well, more musicals were like, we gotta go big, we gotta go broke. And so there was a musical called Time on the West End. Literally, it was called Time. And the whole thing about it was like the set was insane. Or they did the musical Metropolis with Judy Kuhn, with Mike Kunze. Yeah. And like that was a whole thing about like the set was insane. And I talked about this on the Smile episode, but like American creatives were feeling more pressure to compete. So like a lot of musicals that probably would have been better as a medium-sized musical like Smile got blown up way bigger than they ever should have, and they got lost in the kerfuffle. Smile, at the very least, like when it closed, Howard Ashman went, okay, let's go back to our roots and make this the medium-sized musical this was supposed to be. And the licensed version is a lot better in thanks to that. And actually, I've realized this now, going with Carrie, and then eventually when we get to Sideshow, every one of the musicals I've covered so far has had tinkerings done with them when they've like returned to the mainstream. And I would argue most of the revising doesn't work. So far I've covered Pal Joey, Candide, Mac and Mabel, Working, Smile, and now Carrie. And then after this will be Sideshow. And I think of those 7, I think the Smile reversal and the Candide revisal in the 70s are the only ones that I would consider successful. Everything else, I'm like, there are moments that I think work, and then other things that I think get lost. But that's just me. Anywho, but yes, it was a response to Les Mis and Cats and eventually Phantom. They're like, we need to have bold sets, pyrotechnics, big music, loud emotions, because we got to compete with these melodramatic fuckers. And Terry Hands somehow convinced the writers that he was the right dude for the job, and they got swept up in it. And they're working on pre-production. And the Weislers, okay, there is an urban legend that I don't know how much I truly believe, but I'm going to tell the urban legend anyway. The Weislers talked to Terry Hands as he was working on pre-production. Terry Hands also, weirdly, the lighting designer for this show. And he's working with his design team on how the show's going to look. And they're like, there's so many possibilities with the whole high school element. When you're thinking of this musical, think Grease.
Yes.
And
I'm inclined to believe this is real. I think this is a real thing. It sounded like a very real thing every time I heard it recounted.
It's entirely possible. I'm just saying, like, as far as I know, I don't think Terry Hands has ever like come out to say like, oh no, that absolutely happened. That was a miscommunication. So I don't know. I still think of it a bit as an urban legend, but it's very possibly true. But so they said, think of Grease, meaning the musical. And then 6 months go by while he flies to London to work on pre-pro with his design team, and the Weislers are working on something else. And this is the 80s, so like there's no FaceTiming, there are no emails, like it's basically just phone calls and faxing. So they saw no sketches, they saw nothing until they flew out after 6 months to see what came out. And they see this design, which is a big white box with like revolving mirrors, and costume designs are like togas and things. And Terry Hands said, well, you said Grease. And they said, not the country, the musical.
Incredible.
And so I think, yeah. And so Terry Hands, I think, softened it a bit, but still kept the Grecian aesthetic. And the Weisler said, we out.
They that's why I think it's true, is like the sketches, like it all makes sense as a story if you think about the fact that like even now, even with text, like an email and all that, like people don't super communicate great even now. So like you can totally see them saying that like that it's a show about high schoolers, think Grease, like make it. And then the sketches of the togas and the fact they left after that they saw what was happening. I'm like, that absolutely happened. And it really, even though I'm sure so much of this was so heartbreaking, it's a stunning way for a ship to sink. I think it's like a glorious way to lose people on a production, because you can't come back from that. I mean, that's just wild.
Yeah, especially because like we have that we had for a while. We don't really have it anymore. We have like one or two exceptions, and I hate both of them. But we used to have sort of the director auteur, the one with the vision, who really spearheaded everything, and it was these big bold choices, and sometimes they were thought as revolutionary and brilliant, and other times they were thought as mind-boggling. And Terry Hands was someone who had had a lot of artistic success with Shakespeare. He had done one musical, it was called Poppy. It did win the Olivier for best musical, but never done since, and we haven't seen it. It was a musical about the Opium War, so think about that.
And the creative team of Carrie, who had not, I believe, written stage musicals. Did they not comment that they had like seen Poppy and walked out?
Yeah, they did. They literally said that Terry Hands was the last person they wanted to direct it. But then when they met with him, they were like, actually, maybe this will work. Maybe this is really brilliant. Because, I mean, we hear stories all the time of, so-and-so was the absolute last choice and they didn't want them, but they forced their way in. And now it's history. I mean, like the movie, Sissy Spacek was not on Brian De Palma's list for Carrie. Like he thought she was too beautiful. He thought she was too much of an ingenue. And she had to force her way into the audition room and show him that she could do it. And now it's an Oscar-nominated historic performance. But it just can so easily go different ways. And it's the danger of making bold choices. I always talk about like casting talent aliens, people who are weird and make interesting choices and aren't cookie cutter. Because if you can channel into like what makes them special and make it work with the story, you can make something really incredible, or you could make a fucking mess.
This is a whole.
It's a whole conversation.
I'll connect it back to Carrie. Is that Carrie's finale? I talk a lot. Kind of what we're talking about right now, and I talk a lot in certain avenues. Is like you will be foundenism and build a prom for everyone, which is where like there are these shows on Broadway that like sing songs and then have like people sing songs for like, events and stuff that are all about how we're all going to love each other and get help and no one's alone. And, it's going to get better. But in Carrie, the finale is not, you will be found, you're not alone ambiguously, or build a prom for everyone, but not in real life. It's just be nice to people. Yeah. I'm like, I bet they're going out and doing that. Like, I hope, that's an easy takeaway. That's like something you can take home with you and go, what does it cost? Well, whether or not I agree with that being the finale of the show, it doesn't bother me in the way that.
Oh, you mean the added part, like in the revisal, they were like, think before you believe.
It really is. They're like, this was a 2.5-hour PSA that you just watched.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's true. That's what I just watched.
It's so fun. I totally forgot about that. Like after Carrie, spoiler, when Carrie dies, and Sue's just like, think about your words, and everyone comes out and they're like, we all should think about what we do.
That's verbatim.
They're like, people have emotions. Anyway, we haven't even gotten into the plot.
And that, I'm like, that's the level at which, we can function successfully without me getting mad about people not taking action. Think about what you're doing.
Yeah, just think about it.
No real action items, but that counts.
Yeah, I don't know. Actions are importante. Donating to good causes that help are importante. Just, every now and then check in with yourself and go, have I done anything for the people I care about lately? And if you can't remember the last time you did it, do something.
That's so nice. That's nice.
Yeah,
nice
I don't know. I don't
nice commercial for doing something.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like to be accusatory because I feel like a lot of us are trying, but I think a lot of people also get complacent and don't realize that it's been a while since they've done something. So I'm like, hey, just think about it.
This like I enjoy this conversation a lot, but it's like I lean into actors more and I post a lot of things like I'm disappointed in my community because it's the business of empathy. We're in the business of empathy, and it's so easy to get carried, and I've done this too. It's so easy to get carried away with like your own journey in this art of making your own path and forging your own career and climbing on top of people. And we're kind of taught to do that. And like, at the same time, like talking out of the other side of our mouth, being like, we're empathetic and we're, reaching into other people's stories and we're making change and we're in this business of change making. And it's like, well, you have to kind of pick a side, which is, are you in the business of empathy and change making? Are you in the business of like doing whatever it takes to become successful for yourself?
Yeah.
But like I said, I've been a culprit of that. So it's more something that I ponder and discuss rather than like throw daggers. Now on Instagram, I throw some daggers a little bit.
Sure. Sometimes you throw daggers, but I don't think you're ever off base when you throw the daggers, just when you came for me about Diana. But then you said the second part of your statement. And I went, oh, okay, I'm not fully a part of that sentence. At least I didn't think so. You did not say Matt Koplik, you
in history. It really had, I think, nothing to do with me. I have so many friends who love Diana, and I have absorbed so much content and culture about Diana that I didn't watch it for a long time, and then finally I did, and my feelings changed on it.
Yeah, it's fun. But as you said, also bringing back to Carrie, it actually reminds me a bit of Heathers in a way. The original movie, Heathers, not the stage show, but
it has some songs. It has some moments.
It's got bops, but I don't like the musical. But the movie, one of the reasons why I love the ending of the movie with Miss Wino is because the character of Veronica Sawyer, she's always talking about wanting change in her school and wanting it to be nicer. And the whole movie, in a way, when you think about it, she's always kind of taking the easy way out of things. Not that murder is the easy way out, but you know what I mean? Like she's not losing anything anytime anything happens for hopefully social change. Yeah. And what she realizes at the very end, after all the things go down, is if she wants people to be nicer to each other, it starts with her. Like she has to just go over to Martha Dunstock and say, hey, do you want to hang out tonight? And that's how the movie ends, is her and Martha being like, we're going to hang out tonight and watch a movie. And that's the beginning of a chain of reactions. And that actually brings us to Sue Snell with Carrie, back to Carrie, back to the origins of the show.
Not Sue Snell.
The Sue Snell of it all. But also, how dare you, Stephen King, giving her a name like Sue fucking Snell.
Iconic. But
I know Chris Hargensen is such a great name. Carrie White is a great name. And then you got Sue Snell.
I will say in terms of names in this, what gets me more is that her full name is Carrietta. I never expected it. And I fully believe and respect that's a name, but she's so famously named Carrie that whenever they're like, but it's really Carrietta, I go, no, it's not in this case. Stop. Just call her Carrie.
That is not true. That's an alternate universe in the multiverse. But I think in the movie, Margaret calls her Carrietta like once. Just so we're all aware of what Carrie is short for. But then the rest of the movie, it's like, don't worry about it. We're going to keep calling her Carrie. So I'll get back to the history of the show in a second, but let's talk about the show for a bit itself. Preston, for anyone who doesn't know, what is Carrie about?
Oh my gosh. Carrie is about a young woman in high school named Carrietta White. And she is a bit of a loner is an understatement. She's very bullied. She's a very bullied child. She grew up in an extremist religious household with a single mom, Barbara, who is just Margaret. I was thinking of Barbara
Cook. Yeah,
Margaret
you were.
White. I was like, the iconic Barbara Cook was Carrie's mom. Margaret White, and Margaret is like very Westboro Baptist, but not really, because she in the book she like left the Baptist church because it was too like not extreme. She was too extreme for them. That should place you to where she is. It's a very frightening energy in that household, and she comes to school carrying some of that energy with her, but really trying to connect to students, and it's failing. And then one day she gets her period for the first time in gym class, and she is very bullied for it, and they throw tampons and pads at her and go, plug it up. It's very iconic. And at the same time, she's starting to experience symptoms of telekinesis. And basically, it's about kind of the fallout of that moment, I would say, where she gets her period and she is bullied. And it's about kind of the actions that some people are taking to repair that relationship and to realize how far they've gone bullying Carrie, and to try to walk that back and to repair that. And to examine their own behavior. And then also people who are not going to take that route and are going to lean harder and are mad that people are taking that route. And so we have Sue, who kind of not, in the musical more represents, in the book is a little more thorough, but like, and in some of the movies too, Sue's more representative of anything than like fully a character.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she's like the goodness of it. She's the oops, I fucked up. We shouldn't have done that. Tries to repair, tries to get Tommy to take Carrie to prom as an apology. And then we have
Tommy is her
Parkinson.
boyfriend, by the way. Tommy is Sue's boyfriend.
Yes. Tommy is Sue's angelic boyfriend. Can do no wrong.
Yes, and they're both very popular students. So Tommy taking Carrie is like a very big deal.
They're very like Barbie and Ken.
Mm-hmm.
And then Chris and Billy, who are the other side of that coin, who are like, no, we hate Carrie and we're mad that there's consequences to bullying her, and we're gonna. And Chris leads the charge of, prom's coming up, and I'm gonna kill a pig, and we're gonna dump that blood on Carrie. We're gonna rig prom queen so she gets it, and we're gonna humiliate her in prom, and it's gonna be a hilarious prank, but everyone dies. Yes. And yeah, so that's, and it's also about Carrie's kind of the increase in her telekinesis and her relationship with her mom, and there's a lot of metaphor for puberty in there, but also and I think we'll get into this later, also it's just very originally, organically, very much about telekinesis, like about the fact that she does have that, like that's not super a metaphor kind of.
No, it depends on which adaptation you're looking at. The movies obviously embrace it a bit more than the musicals because they can. Carrie legitimately like has telekinetic powers, and the book discusses it in a much more scientific kind of way. It tries to overly explain like how it comes to be and what whose genetics give it to the child. Like so the book also is done, and it's important to talk about the book as well. So the book, obviously written by Stephen King, it's the first successful novel that he published, and then the movie version of it was so successful that he became a household name, and now he's the Stephen King we all know and love with Misery, It, The Shining, Shawshank Redemption. But in the book, it's written in a couple of different ways. There's a regular novel format where there's like a third person narrator and talking about what's going on in the moment, and then it like flashes forward a year or two or flashes back a couple of years. Like he'll write all of a sudden like a news clipping about falling stones hitting the White household in 1966 for 10 minutes and no one knows why. Or like you read interviews with Sue or the teacher, gym teacher, Miss Desjardins, who eventually becomes Miss Collins and then Miss Gardner in the musical. I think because Miss Desjardins is just a weird name, and
then Miss Collins was too simple.
Miss Collins was too simple.
They find middle ground there, but they have her resignation letter in the book. It's like a lot of clippings from Sue's book that she wrote in the future.
And then
about it.
And then interrogations from the police of Sue and Miss Gardner asking like what happened that night. Like they keep talking in the book about the fateful prom night, like what happened, and everything in the books leading up to that moment. And part of the book also are discussions from doctors and scientists about telekinesis, what it is, how it comes about. And one of the things they talk about why telekinesis is so rare in the world of the book Carrie is it's passed down through the mother. But on top of that, it also has to match with there has to be a dominant gene in the father as well. Of telekinesis, and but it has to pass down through the mother into another girl. And in order for that to really be ensured, a lot of children who have telekinesis tend to be the product of incest, because the only way to like ensure that both the male and female have that gene is if they're in the same bloodline. So Carrie is not directly the product of incest, but it is implied in the book that Margaret might be, and therefore but Carrie's father also has the gene, so it's more a coincidence that he and Margaret get together and make Carrie.
Yeah, I need to check back in with the book, because in the sequel, it's very important that Ralph White had the gene.
Yeah.
Because that's how Rachel got it.
Yeah. In the movie,
in the movie, she should be. According to the book, Ralph White is long past dead. Has been dead for 30 years, I think.
Yeah.
When Rachel Lang is alive. So.
Yeah. The world of the movie is again has some differences from the book. In both the book and the movie, Ralph leaves Margaret pretty soon before Carrie is born.
He's dead in the book
He
earlier.
does die in the book about a year or two after Carrie's born, but not he's a construction worker and he dies on the job. That's all that it is. And then in the movie, he runs off with another woman, never to be heard from again.
It's only super important if you're me and you've written a musical of Carrie 2 and you're trying to figure out how the fuck Ralph White was Rachel Lang's father, 30 years after the events of Carrie.
Well, the role of Ralph is important in both the book and the movie. Less so in the musical, only really in the song I Remember How Those Boys Could Dance, just in the character of Margaret. And we will talk about the Margaret White of it all. But
I was going to say it is important in the musical, but only in one adaptation, which is the Dubai private school, the Dubai Scholars private school version, which I'm sure I'll talk about at length, whether anyone wants to do or not.
I watched a little bit.
Oh my God. You need to sit down and watch that.
I had to stop after the Carrie number where she had backup dancers.
I prayed this day would never come. I should have known. I should have known. Now I am alone. I'm so afraid. Oh Lord, I've seen this power before. The flesh is weak and I have lost. Father, don't forsake her, but take her. Cleanse and purify her.
So you learn a lot about the backstory of Margaret White in the book that you don't get from the movies, that you don't get from the musical. And I actually think it's to the benefit of the character that we don't know that much about her because it makes her scarier, or at least I should say in the first movie and in the musical. In the first movie and in the 88 version of the musical, it makes her a lot scarier. Whereas in the further adaptations on film and then the revisal, they work hard to make her more of a person, more of a level-headed person. And I think that is to the detriment of the role. Because I would argue the only other villain that's bigger than Chris Hargensen and Carrie is Carrie's mother, Margaret White.
She's definitely supposed to be a deeply unsettling person.
Yeah, she's not she's barely human. And it comes from years of building upon an already troubled mentality. She was she was already a God-loving woman from a very young age, more grew up in a Christian household, and her own family when she was 7 were you are a lot. And then her mother remarries, and apparently in the book she would always tell her stepfather you and my mom are living in sin, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, you're going to hell, as a 9-year-old. And would freak out at kids at school for doing things that she thought were sinful. And that's as a child. It only built from there. And then when she had her own trauma that just kept building upon the monster that she would be. That's
what's so incredible about that character that we miss in the musical that's in the book. And I have to really think through the movie. I haven't seen the 2013 one in a while, but she's so consistently extremist is not even the right word. Yeah. She is on an entirely other level than most people, and she really believes it. And the thing about the musical is they want to soften and empathize with characters as a way to get in. And the breaking point for Margaret kind of, I think, typically isn't, when there's no one, which is actually this fear of being alone and this fear of losing Carrie, which is a beautiful song. But the breaking point for that character so much is that she actually really enjoyed sex, and she enjoyed that. And she had fun doing, and that's what is so horrific to her. And that's where she snaps, and she's yells at Carrie and I like being fucked. And you're oh, that's a different thing that I heard from the musical.
Well, okay, so
where she loses it. But
I don't want to put the book on too high of a pedestal, because I will say there are things in the book that I find rather cringy, only because it's hard to read it and know if Stephen King is making a comment on it or if he's fetishizing, which is to say there's a lot of rape culture in Carrie. Both Margaret and Chris have sexual relations with the men in their lives. Margaret with Ralph White before Carrie is born, and then the night the night that Carrie was conceived, and then Chris with Billy. Billy is Chris's boyfriend who does all the stuff with her. In the book, both Chris and Billy are very troubled, bordering sociopathic, and the way they get together is Chris is a very popular girl, very I don't want to say teeny boppery, but a little teeny boppery, even though she has the mind of Patrick Bateman. And
she's a teeny boppery, but would probably kill animals as a child.
Yeah,
that energy.
looks like Farrah Fawcett, but has the mind of Patrick Bateman, which is horrifying. But she meets up with Billy, who's sort of a bad boy, and he doesn't think much of her. And their first night together, he actually kind of rapes her. And what gets them dating is she kind of enjoys that she enjoyed it at the end. Like it was still rape, but King talks about how like she liked the idea that she couldn't control him, that he was violent. And so their sex life is similar to that. And then Margaret and Ralph, they were sexual together before they got married, which resulted in Margaret being pregnant and having a miscarriage, which she believed was God saying, like, you have sinned, you won't have children. So they got married and were never having sex. She was like, we can't ever be intimate this way. It's a sin. And then one night, Ralph goes out drinking with his construction worker buddies, comes home and starts to rape Margaret, which then she starts to like, which again is like it's a very tough thing to read about from King, because it's hard to know what his attitude is. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, Preston, because it confused me.
I need to revisit the exact, what I got from it was like, yes, she did not want to have sex. It was unconsensual. I think what he is expressing is that like, regardless of that moment, like Margaret is kind of releasing that she was so condemning of those behaviors and those actions and sexuality, because she knew she was capable of liking it, of enjoying, of wanting to have sex, of wanting that kind of relationship and that kind of like lifestyle. But she's so that's never going to happen. Like she's so, that is a sin, that is horrible. And so when she admits that she gets what is enticing about it, she's like, so I don't know, the way that line is written when she's telling Carrie that like that she enjoyed whether it was in that instance or just something she realized about herself. It's just written in such a way where like you can see like a glimpse into how out of absolute control of herself this woman is, and unable to unable to see this normal and accessible part of life. Sex is something that is that could be a part of her life, and you know everyone else is out there having it, and that's why she's so protective of Carrie and so angry. And so, but like seeing that part of Margaret as someone who not wants to be, but like knows she's capable of being sexual, is like one of the scariest moments of the book, I think,
and the movie, the scene where she recounts the night that Carrie was conceived to her. Piper Laurie. Another reason another reason why the movie is very important to talk about is especially because of the character of Margaret White. So Sissy Spacek as Carrie and Piper Laurie as Margaret White were both Oscar nominated for that film. And when you watch the movie, rightfully so. And Piper Laurie and Carrie is often considered a horror story, and there's a lot of things about it that are scary. I would argue the scariest things in Carrie have nothing to do with Carrie's powers or the pig's blood. It has to do with Margaret. Margaret is absolutely terrifying, because this poor girl is living alone in this home for years with this truly awful, abusive, violent, authoritative individual who's also out of her mind, completely out of her mind. And Piper Laurie plays it so bonkers. And like, what makes it so scary is like when Margaret is at her worst, you see this beacon of joy on her face. Again, spoiler alert, both of them die at the end of the story. How they die differs based on the adaptation, unless of course it's that one adaptation. But you know, in terms of deaths, the one adaptation is the outlier.
I mean, the movie,
the 2002 movie is the outlier, because in terms of, I was thinking about Margaret, and I was like, well, in the musical it's the same as the book, but in the movie it's not. But the 2002
Can we just say what happens in the 2002?
Fine, okay, Preston, okay. How do Margaret and Carrie die in the book and musical?
Well, either Carrie comes back to the house and Margaret like always stabs her, is always like, time to go back to heaven. This didn't work out very well. And then Carrie always kills her, either by stopping her heart via telekinesis or like stabbing her in a crucifix position, because it's cinematically more interesting. And they both die. And then at the end, usually Sue revisits the grave and there's a jump scare with Carrie's hand shoots out. And that's usually a dream, but it's a scary moment and we love it. But in the 2000, either one or two, I think it's one TV movie. Maybe it's two. Oh my God. It's not the thing I'm remembering right now. Sue goes to the grave. All has happened. Everyone's dead. It's over. Sue goes to the grave and looks next to her, and fucking Carrie is standing right there Angela
with a
Bassett
wig on.
standing right
Carrie's
there
alive
in a disguise. And I went, what? And she's alive. And I went, what is this? And it turns out Brian Fuller, like that was like a pilot essentially for a TV show they wanted to do, where Carrie and Sue were going to go talk to telekinetic kids in Florida, a show I would have watched, but definitely shouldn't exist. And I also would have thought it shouldn't exist while watching it. So I see what they did there, but as they were doing it, it maybe should have been present, the feeling that it wasn't going to work.
But yes, the bottom line is that Margaret dies usually by Carrie stopping her with telekinesis. She even in the novel, she even narrates, she's like, "I'm stopping your heart, mama."
Slower.
And,
Slower.
And then of course in the stage show, she does it and there's no narration. So if you don't know the book at all, you just watch Margaret stab Carrie for seemingly no reason, and then Carrie just sort of looks at Margaret keels over and audiences are like, the fuck. But in the 76 version, Margaret does stab Carrie, which doesn't fully kill her, and as Piper Laurie is following her with the knife to stab her again, she has this look on her face of pure joy because she's sending her daughter back to God. And on top, and also, just to be clear, in the book, this is the third time that Margaret has attempted to kill her daughter. She tried to kill Carrie the day she was born because she, as far as she was concerned, her child was conceived out of sin, and therefore this child was a demonic child, and then tried to kill Carrie again when it was clear as a child that Carrie had telekinetic powers. And then that's what caused the stones to fall in the house, is Carrie was fearful of her life and the stones fell and stopped Margaret. And then Margaret didn't try to kill her again for many years, and Carrie repressed the telekinetic powers until her period, which was her first period ever, which she never knew about because her mother never taught her about how the body works. It's it's so great and awful at the same time. But Piper Laurie's performance as Margaret White is so scary because of that joy she often has. Like, you never know what she's going to do, what she's going to say, and when she does die, she almost kind of has, it's almost as if she's having an orgasm, because Carrie, telekinetically throws a bunch of kitchen knives at her to stop her from killing her. And she looks like she's almost like Jesus on the cross, and, all these knives in her. And Piper Laurie's face and the way she's moaning, you're just like, is she dying or is she having an orgasm? And the answer is both. And it tells you the kind of person that Margaret is, that kind of pain gives her such pleasure, that she is, it's the ultimate kind of atoning that anyone could do in Margaret's eyes. And it shows you just sort of how far gone this woman was. And on top of which, that she never, when you realize like the joy she was having of wanting to kill her own daughter, and then when you read in the book the times that she planned to kill her before, you realize this is a woman who doesn't love her child. She's terrified of her child because of what she knows her daughter is capable of should she ever gain control of her powers, which she does. But then in later adaptations, they try to soften Margaret and make it, that she has this loving feeling for her daughter. The 88 version makes it a little more complicated. Then the revisal makes it more so. She keeps saying like, my sweet girl, my angel, my baby. And it's because, and on top, and part of the reason why I bring up Piper Laurie is every performance of Margaret White after her has tried so hard to go against what Piper has done.
Yeah.
And I think to the detriment of the character. Betty Buckley maybe has come closest. And I think that's because it's the more recent performance from the movie in terms of like time elapsing.
I agree with that. I think that, and this happens with several characters, is the want to, quote unquote humanize is stressful to me in this case, because like in Carrie, people who are making these horrible, abusive, murderous mistakes are human. It's like part of it is, and that's the whole thing with Margaret White. And that's the whole thing where he's kind of talking about her relationship to sex and sexuality, is like, she is human, and she is, she is unable to function in this world as someone who is flawed and who is trying to find this set of rules. And part of her monstrousness, like, absolutely is her humanity. And it doesn't have to do with this missing piece of, secretly wanting, this beautiful connection with her daughter. It's just this, she's just out of control. She's just lost it. She's just unwell. And to me, there's no, like I said, the missing piece in the book to me was that she was, horrified and frustrated with herself for human urges that she couldn't figure out how to communicate with. And often that were brought on in times that were non-consensual, which of course, like, is going to complicate that even further. But then, yeah, in the musical, you know, it's and how I remember how The Boys Could Dance addresses that, you know, somewhat thoroughly, but it's still even very skewed towards how many positions Margaret was put in, and not the effect that those had on her or how she interacted with those positions. It's about like how boys were the culture of maleness and sexuality, and not her relationship to it.
Not her culpability. Like, it's not what she did, but what was done to her, which I think makes it more of a victim-y song than I think it should be. And by making it a victim-y song, makes her less complex.
Yes, and I think she's definitely describing a moment in which she was a victim, but there is more to it. There is more to her story than that moment, than that moment in the kitchen, and then what is described in, like, by far what is described in How the Boys, and I Remember How the Boys Could Dance. And yeah, I think When There's No One is just really kind of fuzzes my brain about that character, because I'm like, you can write the most beautiful song in the world and it doesn't help the show at all.
100%. When There's No One is a gorgeous song that people do in cabarets. It's like, it's a beautiful song, and it should not go to Margaret White, not one bit. That character would never sing that song.
When the tune that filled my days no longer plays, the room is still, and I hear long sighs. When the song dies, was I so foolish to...
The benefit of a novel is you have all this time that you can dedicate to numerous characters, and you can jump back and forth, and you can talk about what's going on inside their head in a way that a song can't, and you know, just add all these details. So like, Sue is much more complex in the book, but eventually when you're dramatizing a story like Carrie, you have to kind of choose whose story are we following. And the movie very much says, like, this is Carrie's story, so everyone else's roles have to reflect, you know, what they mean to her story. And then the musical was unsure in the 80s of whose story it really was, and exactly what that tone was. And then in the revisal, it weirdly becomes much more Sue's story in a way that I think is really harmful to the show. Like, Carrie almost becomes a secondary character in her own musical.
And Sue is not pulling any sort of emotional weight that makes her worth following as the main character.
No, she's just like, nice.
Sue is still just the nice girl who feels bad. And there's so much more to that character. And a little bit, I'm going to say this tenderly, when there are so many people working on your show at a certain point, even not at a certain point, like, put someone who's not a cis man in the writer's room to explore femaleness and being a teen girl in high school and what that experience is like. Because that is kind of always what every adaptation is missing, is there's no one who isn't a cis man who is contributing to the writing and direction of the show in the iterations that have been public. I don't think that's wrong to say. I think that has happened across all the musical.
In terms of the writing,
Debbie Allen. Well, I would say the 88 is Debbie Allen's show.
Yeah, but also because the 2014 movie was directed by a woman, and I think she also wrote the screenplay as well. But in terms of the musical, none of the writers were anything but cis men.
Yeah, and I very much mean that in terms of the musical, because you have 3 writers, you have a director, you know, you have opportunity to capture a level of these characters that they just can't have experience with, the people who, and I think that to me is a little bit like what could have been an ingredient that was always missing as they tried to fix this musical and tried to, you know, bring this musical to the time. They're trying to figure out what wasn't clicking. I'm like, diversify your writers' room.
I mean, just for a start, there are a lot of things that I think are wrong and that I think are sort of unavoidable with adapting Carrie. But I mean, diversifying in general, always great, because the more voices you have from different walks of life, the more, you know, things you never would have thought of become ideas, and it's great. You know, instead of just being like, what's a good song for Sue to sing in Act 2 that people won't walk out during? It's like, well, you won't think of it until you talk to the woman who's playing the role,
and it will never come to this show in any form. That's really, I mean, I know that, you know, I disagree with the idea that writers could write anything because we're writers, and I just think that with this musical, they have tried so many avenues of re-exploration, but not bring in someone who has experience with what you're talking about. Because I mean, so much of the show is about this piece, but the show, because we're talking about the show in terms of like the emotionality that music adds and the opportunity to expand and all that, like, is about like the rage of these women, the rage of all of these women. That's what it's about. And I think that the musical wants to find, like, the musical centers the rage in a way as if it's expected, but it's not like the everyone's experience with like fury and anger at themselves and at the world is really internalized. And so the music to me wouldn't come from a place of like hopefulness or connection or heart. It's like Carrie's inner monologues are violent, like in the book. And I'm not saying they need to be that violent, but she's not, the hopeful Disney princess singing Carrie. And, and Chris Hargensen, I know this is complicated, but Chris Hargensen isn't the person who's going to have that tag of like, oh, I'm just following the rules at the end of, according to Chris, that sometimes is there, like, oh, it's I'm also put upon. And the end starts with, like, the show undermines itself fairly immediately by starting from a place of, oh, we're all tortured, oh, we're all so sad. Underneath our anger is such sadness and lack of connectivity and blah, blah, blah. But really, like, so much of it is that underneath these kids trying to get through the day and make connections and being like trying to, like, some of them are bitchy and some of them are quiet, like, underneath all of that is like anger. And that's where that's the engine of the music for me. And it's super absent from the musical. That's just not part of it.
I'm going to continue with what you're saying in 5 seconds. I do want to say, I don't think all writers can write anything because they're writers. However, I do think they can expand their brain. And part of that comes from, engaging with people that aren't just like them. Does that make sense? And
from your mouth. Yes, I think but I think a lot of people, my experience has been someone saying, I can write anything because I'm a writer is not the person who's going to do that.
Oh, absolutely not.
They're not going to go out and do that.
No, I think acknowledging your limitations while trying to improve your abilities is a great way to go. Like, you acknowledging your limitations and then striving to have your boundaries get wider, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Knowing that it'll probably never get to a place where you'll be all encompassing, but always striving for it. And knowing that you're never going to get it right, no matter what you do, but you keep trying. I don't like the writers who come down on high being like, well, I speak for everyone. I speak for every generation, every gender, every person. I'm like, no, you don't. Sit down quietly. But going back to what you were saying about the rage, about the music, about all of that, it's fantastic. I want to lock into that. Before I do, let me tell you a little bit about what went down at Stratford-upon-Avon.
It was all a success.
Oh, it was already sold out before they started a single performance. True. The reason why Preston mentioned Barbara Cook earlier, y'all, is Betty Lynn Buckley was not the original Margaret White cast in the show. She was who was approached first. She was who Dean Pitchford wanted because they had known each other since their Pippin days. But she sat down with Terry Hands after being a Tony winner, after being in Mystery of Edwin Drood, after being on TV and in movies.
After being in Carrie, very much.
After being in the movie Carrie as Miss Collins, Terry Hands was like, "Who are you? What kind of person are you?" And Betty Buckley's like, "You know Trevor Nunn, ask him because I did fucking Cats with him." Yeah. And he's like, And so then he reaches out to Barbara Cook, who hadn't been on a Broadway stage in 17 years. He's like, "This would be your comeback." And Barbara Cook is like, "I did The Music Man. You want me to be Margaret White?" But what draws her in, as what drew everyone else into the show, is she would listen to the score and go, some of this is actually really great. Some of this is fucking garbage, but like there is a germ here that maybe we'll figure out of town. So like, she says, this guy's the artistic director of the Royal Shakespeare Company. If something's not working, surely he'll know. And they get to rehearsals, and there was a lot of controversy because it was part of the Royal Shakespeare Company's season that they were doing this production of Carrie, because the English population felt betrayed that the Royal Shakespeare Company was using government subsidies or whatever to launch an out-of-town tryout.
Yeah. And
Terry Hands' wording of it, which is, if ever there was a bullshitter, he said, no, this is just the first stop on what's going to be an international tour. Broadway just happens to be the second stop.
I wish.
Yeah, everyone's like, go sit on a cactus, Terry. But the show is already pre-sold out, so they're already kind of thinking to themselves, oh, we've got this locked and loaded. The reviews at Stratford-upon-Avon were sort of mixed. Everyone was like, I mean, maybe, but also like it was just so wild that I think no one knew what to do with it. But Sally Ann Triplett talked about like from their very first performance at Stratford-upon-Avon to like Broadway, she and like Charlotte Demoise would come out and like just be met with laughs all the time and like guffaws, and then they would get booed at curtain calls, and like Lindsay would get cheers but she would not. So whenever like Penny Buckley or Lindsay or the writers talk about like half the audience loved it, half the audience hated it, Sally's like, the audience always hated my stuff. She's like, people always hate, no, everyone, even the people who loved Lindsay and Betty hated my stuff. She's like, this was not a yeah, she's like, this was not a divisive fault. Yeah, Sally Ann Triplett's still my favorite Mrs. Lovett, so I need her to know this. But I remember I like defended her once because I was listening to an interview she did and people were like, ungrateful. It was a job. She was employed. And I'm like, do you know how devastating it is to get into that pink body stocking every night, knowing what's meeting you on the other side of the footlights?
She's
like
a champion. She can say whatever she wants.
That woman, yeah, she and Charlotte Demoise can say whatever the fuck they want because they made it through that. They went out every night knowing the laughs they were going to get and knowing that production wasn't doing anything to make it better. So like that does something to your psyche of like looking at yourself in the mirror in your costume fitting, seeing the pink stocking you're wearing, knowing the choreography Debbie Allen's making you do, and then knowing what everyone's going to say. So
I loved it. The choreography.
The choreography is
I have no notes.
I love the choreography for how mean it is and how unstructured it is. It is not choreography that understands what a human body's breaking point is. It's also choreography that doesn't understand what structure is. It's just Flashdance fame all the time, always do all the cocaine. What are joints? You know, what are ligaments?
I need to say a shout out to my favorite moment of that production, which was that in Do Me a Favor, a song that is in all productions, in Do Me a Favor, in 2012, after they redid it, it's a song in which Sue is asking Tommy to take Carrie to prom and Chris is trying to get Billy to kill the pig. So it's very communicative. It's very real life. It's like very like, it's like one of the most grounded songs in the show.
Yeah.
And in 2012, they're like at school, they're communicating, they're in plain clothes, they're just talking it out. It's how like it makes sense for it to be presented. But in 88, they were wearing these glittery bodysuits, truly just dancing through that whole song. I don't even know if there's like a set piece, like there's no,
it's just dark lighting in that giant white Rubik's Cube.
And they are fully choreographed nonstop in this like extremely grounded communicative song where it's honestly the last way that song should have worked. It's my favorite thing. I love it so much.
And the ensemble is in full-blown leather. It looks like a leather bar. The best thing about it also, something that I love, and I thought you were going to mention this, and that's why I was guffawing. So when the song begins, it's also, I think I will say the song has a lot going for it. I don't think it's perfect, but there's a lot there, and I think it's a right thing to musicalize, and I think it's very smart of them to mix Chris and Sue's storyline in that song together because it's economical, it makes sense, and I still prefer the original version of it, even though the revisal version has fewer cringy lyrics. But I love that in the original, and you can watch the video of it, they have like this whole intro, and then the ensemble comes together in a giant clump, and then a hard spotlight hits Sally Ann Triplett in her pink bodysuit, just looking like the shiniest of pink condoms. And behind her is Tommy, who she's singing to, but she's singing out to the audience. And Tommy's behind her while she's singing, Tommy, lately, I've just not been feeling right. Meanwhile, he's shammying, dancing. Like, so I can't do it justice, like with just my audio. Just know that like while this really quiet musical moment of just like earnestness from Sue is happening, Tommy's behind her being like, like it looks like the wacky inflatable arm flailing tube band. It's great.
It's really as if you were like choreographing a song for like a dance performance where, you know, all you were choreographing songs from, you know, different Broadway shows for an evening of dance performances. And someone chose this one from Carrie, Do Me a Favor, and was like, and it's going to be a full dance performance for this evening of dance. And you were like, this song, that's not going to make sense. They're just talking to each other.
This is a plot song.
They should be looking at it. They should be engaged. They should be. No, they are fully like senior showcase, all out glitter like, body rolls.
It's like taking the rumor from Fiddler on the Roof and making that your dance piece.
Come on, Nothing's too good for my girls to what's wrong. Ask me for anything, I'll do my best. I've been so worried, cause you're too depressed. I would do anything for you. No, I only want.
But so opening night at Stratford-upon-Avon, the set piece that is the White House, which is just a giant plank of wood and a door,
and
comes out.
And justice for that rocking chair.
And that rocking chair, the rocking chair comes out, I think, for the second song. I don't think it comes out for Eva's Meet.
There is one other thing on that stage. Yeah. Don't forget her.
Because we need that rocking chair because she gets pinned to it at the end of the act. But the set piece is starting to come out because it came from the back of the stage of this giant white Rubik's Cube. And Barbara Cook almost got decapitated because the set wasn't doing what it was supposed to. And she goes to the director, who she's already arguing with, and she was like, I will stay with this production until you find a new Margaret, thinking like they'll find someone to replace her at Stratford. And they don't. They're like, we'll find someone after we close. So she does the whole Stratford run, but she's basically like, I'm out of here. And that's where they get back to Betty Buckley when they tell her, like, we will not, if you do not say yes, we don't have a show, and everyone's out of work. She goes, well, I guess I'll just do the show then. And it was honestly the only one of two good things came out of Stratford-upon-Avon. Barbara Cook left, Betty Buckley comes in, and they hired a new orchestrator because the orchestrations were clearly the roughest part of Carrie, although the Broadway orchestrations are fire. So I give them credit for that.
I don't know. I think like Barbara and I think Betty's performance is more true to like what I want out of Margaret White, but I really appreciate what Barbara's doing. I also have an idea, and I want to know if you think this is going to work. It's a musical called Spider Carrie, and it's instead of telekinesis, she gets spider powers, and it combines the two musicals that were most successful on Broadway and the least dangerous, which is Spider-Man and Carrie.
Okay.
I think it's going to be great. Spider Carrie.
I want to see the workshop of that, and then I'll give you my feedback.
I think it can't miss. I think we'll at least sell out one performance.
Oh, you'll at least sell out one performance for sure. There's a lot of drama there. So I
unfortunately trust myself to write that in like 4 days.
Last couple of things about the history of the show, and then we'll just continue talking about the show itself. The production finally starts previews in April of 1988. It ends up opening a little too late to be part of the 1987-88 season. It's what starts off the 88-89 season. Opens at the Virginia Theater to almost entirely pans. The only positive review they got was Clive Barnes, who was like, it's fun. But everyone else is like, no, this is trash. And and Frank Rich even says in his review, he's like, listen, half of this is absolute garbage. The other half is just not very good. He says along the lines of like, he's like, it explodes like the Hindenburg. It's not total camp the entire time. He's like, when it is camp, it's astounding. He's like, it's just not bonkers all the time. And he's right. Sometimes some things in the original production you watch, like Evening Prayers is just so beautiful and it's staged so simply. And you're like, what a gorgeous image. And it comes right after Don't Waste the Moon, which is some drive-in, Alone at the Drive-In in Grease nightmare.
That is like a song that this is a compliment, I swear. This is like a song if I woke up after having smoked all night at like 2 a.m. and remembered I had a deadline the next day and that song moment was missing. And I was like in a haze of like half awake and kind of stoned, like, fuck, I need to put a song in that moment. And then I like wrote Don't Waste the Moon and put it in. I was like, this makes perfect sense. This should be right here. And the words they're saying really capture the moment. That's how I feel about Don't Waste the Moon. I'm like, why is it here and what is it doing? I don't not like listening to it, but it's in a different plane of existence from anything else in that show.
The thing about every song in the 88 version, I can understand why they're there in terms of like what they're trying to do in terms of musicalizing parts of the story, especially after we come off of And Eve Was Weak, which is just like the most operatic Lulu, melodramatic moments of the show. And we needed something to come off of. And I think there's no greater contrast and greater way to show just how awful Carrie's home life is to then show you, here's what other teenagers Carrie's age are doing. They're going to the drive-in, they're having sex, and they're enjoying themselves. And then on top of that, we have Sue beginning her whole, I feel really bad about Carrie. And then we've got Chris being like, thank Carrie. But it's just also a bad song and bad lyrics. And that's why I say we cannot blame Terry Hens for everything, because he did not write the lyrics, boys like you, wham and bam, and thank you, ma'am. Oh, that's not true. Who do you think I am? Bad lyrics.
Well, that's a little bit of the overall complexity and perplexity of Carrie, is that sometimes like the chorus of Don't Waste the Moon is like simply a pop song. Yes, I'm being put.
Did you just say the complexity and the perplexity of Carrie?
Yes, it's both things.
Please tell me that's
perplexity.
Please tell me that that's a rhyme that you've used before.
I have it. It's fully reserved for my feelings on Carrie.
Okay, one of us has to write that down later, because that's just too good. Complexity, perplexity. Go fuck yourself, Preston. That's so good.
Well, hopefully that'll win. If ever I am working on Carrie, and if ever the creators of Carrie find this, hopefully they'll be won over by me using the word perplexed as how I feel. Because some of the music is just like pure kind of 80s pop, and the chorus of Don't Waste the Moon is Don't Waste the Moon is communicating like kind of nothing, but it's fun. It's a pop song. But then like half the score is really communicative, and so it's like half the score is really specific and direct and about stuff, and then other half is like pure pop, not connected to the story, not like just kind of float a little bit. Like I saw a preview of King Kong, and I don't know what happened after, but most of how I felt about the music was it was like pop songs inspired by the idea of King Kong. And like that's a little bit what's happening. So when they're married like that kind of so equally, it's really hard to follow that score. It's really hard to follow how the music is functioning in that score. Because at least in Spring Awakening, they're never communicating directly. They're except a little bit in that one song where she's reading the letter, and then there were none, but she's reading a letter. Other than that, like they've really committed to like only metaphor and only kind of loosely related pop in a way that's really successful, in a way I didn't feel King Kong quite managed. But in this one,
was King Kong unsuccessful, Preston? Was King Kong unsuccessful?
A King Kong super fan who saw it once in previews. I know. I think it's probably the first time also King Kong and Spring Awakening have maybe been pitted against each other. But like that's how I feel, is like they went all the way into two very different ways of songwriting. Yeah. And often in the same song, like especially that's how I feel about Carrie, the song Carrie.
I'm glad I was so ready to like go into the title song now, because of what you're saying. The score is mind-boggling in a lot of ways, because there is a lot of great music in it, but a lot of it is so clashing and not and is a lot of I use this term in the Sideshow episode, spoiler alert, a lot of too much energy for the task. Whereas I do think it works in the OG Sideshow if you have singers who can give their all to it, and you have a director who's able to like give you enough theatrical flair. But Carrie is just a lot, especially, and there's no better example of this than the title song, which they trimmed down for the revisal, but it's still not correct. It's just not. They honestly, I think they should have just started from scratch, because it's a lovely melody that is just too bombastic for that role at that moment of the story. And then the original version, y'all, was a 5-minute song, went on for fucking ever. It's like just her character, like whether you're going in the book where she is like often very angry, she flip-flops between angry and sorrowful, or you go with the Sissy Spacek version where she is just truly like a child wallflower and you want to protect her. That song doesn't work for either version. It's a Alphaba Wizard and I moment for a character who doesn't have the spine for that kind of moment.
Well, that's the thing. I was thinking that exact same thing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the Wizard and I. Only in the Wizard and I, Elphaba is describing very concrete wants and desires, and you can really figure out about a lot about her character. And of course, there's also, what Carrie's doing the same thing with I'll bring them all down to their knees, blah, blah. Obviously, you were like, oh, that's going to go wrong. But with Wizard and I, you can really follow Elphaba's narrative. You can really follow what she's singing about. And in Carrie, I'm like, girl, I wish you well. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know what you want. You want people to know who you are, but to what? Like, what does that mean for your high school experience? Like, what does that mean for how you connect to people and how you like? I wish it had a clear like through line that took me through that song.
Especially because no matter which version of Carrie we're talking about now, she's not super developed at that point of the story in the musical. You know,
No.
we understand immediately that she is not well liked. We understand that she is on the religious side. And then she has the super traumatic moment in the shower where she has her period. The girls throw the tampons on her, plug it up, and then Miss Gardner slaps her, and then a light bulb explodes. And that's the first instance we get that something may not be up with Carrie, which of course, both versions use very few telekinetic moments. So it's not a lot. It's elaborated a bit more in the revisal, not at all in the original, but she's just come off this really traumatic moment and she's very low. She's someone who's often feeling low, and she's heading home to her mother, who's going to throw her in the cellar the moment she learns about what happened to her. She's not feeling empowered. Like Wizard and I works also because while Elphaba is a tragic figure, that moment is inspired. That song is inspired by being offered an opportunity, a concrete one, as you were saying. Like it's a concrete want and desire from a concrete opportunity she's been given. So there's hope now for her.
Yeah,
Carrie has not been given anything resembling hope before this song, and the song does begin angry, a little too angry, again, too much energy for the task, for my opinion. But it then ends in this big bold, like, I am the sound of distant thunder, and you're like, girl. You do not have this kind of confidence yet.
Don't forget she's the color of flame.
She is a song that no one will claim. But she is the song of endless wonder that no one will claim. And which also, like, what a weird line to have for an empowering moment of music.
I think that, like, maybe less than there's no through line is more that the sound of the music is very incongruous from what she's singing, because really the body of that song is they're all making fun of me. I fucking wish they wouldn't. Don't they realize I'm a person? And the pivotal action of their song, the pivotal thing, because I am the sound of endless one, the song of endless one, whatever. I know it when I'm thinking straight, like whatever that is. It's not an action. That's just, I don't know what it is. But the thing in that song is, if I could, I'd bring them all down to their knees. I'd make them sorry forever for teasing Carrie. So what she's saying she wants is to attack them. What she's saying she wants is an act of violence. It's not even like a metaphor. It's not even like an Elphaba song, how you can twist it into thinking it's a good thing. And actually it turns out it's not, like melt and all that. But in this one, she's literally like, I'd make them sorry. And you're like, this is a threat. Like, this is a threat of an attack on these students, but set to the sound of like a Disney princess melody, which could be really intriguing if that felt like the intention of the song. But I don't think it's the intention of the song. I think it's supposed to be, I think you're supposed to want to root for her and feel triumphant for her, but she's telling you, I'm saying point blank a lot, I'm not even sure I'm using it right. She's like flat out telling you she wishes that she could attack them. So I don't get out of that song anything that helps me with the character, but it feels so linked to the show. Like, but also I think that's part of the, I don't know, the complexity. It is
everything about this show that works, or I should say, everything about the show that is memorable and everything that has become synonymous with its quote unquote success are things that I also think are poisoning the well in various ways. Yeah. And I think if you want to keep things from if you want to actually make a good musical of Carrie, which I think is extremely hard to do. I'm not saying impossible, but it is hard to do. I think a lot of the story doesn't fit for stage, but neither here nor there. If you want to go back to the original material as your blueprint and go, okay, what do I want to keep? You have to be really, really harsh, because I don't think it's a show where you can keep the title song and Eve Was Weak and And I remember how those boys could dance. Honestly, I think you can keep one of them. And Eve Was Weak is a song where it's like, in so many ways, it makes so much sense. And it is on a similar to the title song, where like on a musical theater level of just chemical, like, my God, the chills I'm getting from the fucking sound of this right now. Even if you stop and go, wait a second. And Eve Was Weak, I think, is the most in line with what that story is. The problem is that it's the only moment in the show that ever goes to that high of melodrama that first of all, doesn't build to it in any way. It comes out of fucking nowhere. And then of course it ends like you have Betty Buckley, oh man, and you go, how do you fucking follow that up? You don't, like, there's nowhere else to go.
It's incredible. That song, I think, is by far like peak what Carrie could be as a musical, and like peak that score. But
there are also
you're right, that
weird lyrics in there too as well.
Well,
some of Carrie's lyrics.
I get so I'm not listening to Carrie, with all due respect.
I thought I was crying.
oh, she's like, you're doing a lot, mom, so I'm gonna do a little over here. I get that, but you're right that it would need to that would have to, if that's a starting point, you need to keep going up, and it doesn't, because then you couldn't obviously follow that up with Unsuspecting Hearts, a song that I think I would believe is a trunk song. Is it? I don't think it is, but
I know the only version I've watched in a production of that show where I kind of buy Unsuspecting Hearts is the revisal, and it's not because of anything other than the fact that Carmen Cusack is one of the greatest singing actresses we have right now. And she sells that thing like an actual person, and not Darlene Love being like, this is for my next album. That's how it starts.
It doesn't make any sense for the character. It doesn't make any sense for Miss Gardner or it's Gardner.
Gardner Collins Desjardins.
It doesn't make any sense
from here on out. She has to be called by all three names.
And then they think they sing it somehow thrice. I really feel like there's three reprises.
They sing it at the prom.
It keeps coming back, and you're like, why? And my favorite thing in the world, and I find so much joy in this, is a very, very hard song to sing. I think it's secretly one of the hardest songs in musical theater as a duet to sing, because those notes are coming out of nowhere. Those harmonies are like approaching you from all sides, and you like cannot tell. And I watch a lot of because I've seen a lot of the bootlegs and recordings that are on YouTube. I watch a lot of like high schools and colleges and local theaters, and like unless you are prepared to bring that song like everything in the world, it is going to trip you up. And everyone, the panic, like it's some of the most intense connection I've seen between actors, because the Carrie and the Garden are like getting ready to get through this song together. They're always like clinging to each other for dear life.
It's like magic how your spirit soars. Once you feel his hand in yours, that's how it starts to unsuspect. A world where nothing's sure and nothing's ever guaranteed. You should trust him.
So like another thing that Lawrence Cohen talked about was, when they were getting ready to do the show in Stratford, Terry Hands really wanted as little dialogue as possible. He was like, this, in order to maintain the melodrama, he said, we have to keep the music going. Now, in theory, that is correct. That is one of the reasons why Les Mis works when you actually have a director who doesn't treat it like a reality show and understands that it's a sung through melodrama. In my opinion, I've seen productions of Les Mis, for example, in this recent revival, where they're like, we are grittier, realistic. I'm like, no, sweetie, this is a 3-hour opera. The moment you try to make something realistic, it brings to my mind of how ridiculous it is that someone is singing right now. So you have to maintain that fever pitch. So I get that in essence. The problem is that Carrie is about real people, and not everything that's going on in the story is melodrama. It reaches those heights, but it doesn't always go there. And according to Cohen, a lot of very important dialogue was cut in order to get from song to song. However, that doesn't excuse some of the dialogue that made it and that they kept for the revisal. For example, the dialogue leading up to Unsuspecting Hearts, when Gardner tells the girls, you got to apologize to Carrie, otherwise you're not going to prom. Chris won't do it, so she doesn't get to go to prom. And Carrie makes this impassioned speech to Miss Gardner. Please let Chris go. The prom is so important to her. Everyone's so beautiful when they go to prom. Wow, it's like a fairy tale. And it's so treacly, because they're just trying to make Carrie even more endearing. She's thinking of others. And I'm like, ugh, the thing, okay. And then it'll go, which makes Unsuspecting Hearts even more treacly, because it's just like, Carrie, don't you know what it's like to be a girl who's beautiful? You're beautiful. You could be just like them. But if you go to prom, it could be like a fairy tale for you. You meet a boy, you have a love. It's Unsuspecting Hearts, and then Unsuspecting Hearts. So I like in the book, Carrie, she wants to be included, but also is angry at everyone for, treating her the way that they do, rightfully so. And it's very, horny incel on Reddit that's snapping at everyone because I don't want to be included anyway. I just wish someone included me earlier. And that sort of carries a lot of Carrie's mentality in the book.
The horny incel of Reddit.
Exactly. That's in essence. And then in the movie, after all that happens, Carrie goes on study hall during gym, which ends up being the girls' detention. So Carrie's too busy looking up her telekinesis and doing her own thing to worry about all the other girls. So when Chris pins all of her anger on Carrie, you understand that it's sort of unwarranted because like Carrie's not doing anything to her anymore. Like Carrie is off in her own world doing her own stuff. So she's still sympathetic, but she's not like, oh geez, even those who've wronged me. And then like the revisal, they make it even worse when like Chris is about to apologize to her and Carrie's like, you really don't have to. It's fine. And like sorry. I just want to say that.
No. I completely agree with you. And I think that is like, it's so hard to say because it makes me sound so pompous, but we're on here for me to share my opinion. Is like, I feel like the problems with 1988 were not solved in 2012 because what they leaned into was this like goodness. Like, let's really deepen everyone's goodness. And I've spoken about this, but like, that's not the point of the story. Like it's not. Gardner is frustrated with Carrie in a lot of ways. Has slapped Carrie. It's like she's not a beacon of warmth. She's figuring it out. She's a young teacher. She's frustrated by this student who she can't really understand. Like, and then to have Carrie like defend Chris and be like, oh, look how good she is. Look how, the peace she wants. Then have Gardner hop on that. I think that to me is so much of like the skeletal downfall of the show. And it's so much heightened by trying to bring it to now and to 2012, which I'm sure we'll pivot to
we've been dipping into it a bunch already.
Yeah. It's hard not
I'm trying to, so I think the link we'll do to connect the two is in. We'll talk about it in about like 5 seconds. I just want to say one last thing with Carrie, and in regards to like one of the themes of the novel is, just sort of the ugliness of humanity, how things like Carrie's bullying don't just come out of nowhere, they build over time. So Carrie has been bullied since she was, in first grade, and the extent of her bullying now is a result of years of this, of it just increasing over time. And something that King writes about is how like really easy Carrie made for everyone to bully her. She wasn't like a super sweet, innocent girl. She was, in his words, like she's funny looking. She's not very attractive. She dresses odd. She comes from a super religious household. She's very much reclusive. She doesn't endear herself to other people. And there's just something about her that makes it so easy to dislike her. And the gym teacher in the novel doesn't really like Carrie. She feels more guilt about how she treated her in the shower. And the same thing with Sue is in like these people who are doing good things for Carrie do it for their own selfish beliefs of, this will absolve me in the end. They don't actually care about her. And, the teacher is kind of cast aside by Carrie in the book. But in the movie, when it's played by Betty Buckley, Miss Collins, they do alter her to make her a kinder person and genuinely caring about her well-being, which I do think is a good change, because while I don't like the idea of making Margaret more humanistic, making Chris less of a sociopath, trying to expand the role of Sue Snell, I do think there needs to be one person who recognizes that Carrie's a human being, if only because then we can also see the lost opportunity when Carrie snaps at the prom of like there, like someone did care for her, and like she could have been a person if like this incident didn't happen. Like if the Chris prank didn't happen and Carrie got to be crowned prom queen and she went home and had a lovely night and like probably stayed in touch with Miss Collins / Miss Gardner for the rest of her life, like, and got away from her mother, she could have maybe been a person. But what with that trick, which is like obviously 5 steps too far, no one at that point, no one matters. Everyone is under the umbrella of her enemy, including like the one person who cared for her. And we see the humanity that is lost, and that Carrie is no longer any different from the monsters that bullied her. She becomes a monster herself. So now let's go into the opening number, and we're going to use this to tie the original to the revisal as we talk more about the revisal. Although we have talked about the revisal quite a bit, just sort of scattered.
We have,
So how do we want to enter this? Because when I tell you this is my favorite song on the show, I mean this in every possible way that someone could like something, both earnestly, sarcastically, for camp reasons, for bop reasons. Like, there is not a single way one could like something that I don't like this song.
See,
the original, I should say.
I guess we should close out the Broadway portion of this by saying it got bad reviews and it closed very quickly. It
closed after 5 performances. But again, the whole like rewriting history of it all, when you watch that Stars in the House, they're like, well, we actually got a couple of good reviews and we were sold out. Like we had standing ovations, but the lead producer, Franz, whatever his face is, the German guy, closed out
That
all
was
of his
horrible.
accounts.
That was horrible.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's I know he closed all of his accounts because he didn't trust the show, and the rest of the producers were scrambling. They couldn't keep the money afloat, and I totally buy that he closed out the accounts and all that stuff. The thing though is like if the show was truly sold out for the next like couple of weeks, they would have figured something out, because like that's how Broadway works. You make the money every week to keep your enterprise running, and if the money's not in the bank for the next week, like you can't run. So maybe they were sold out for that weekend, but they probably had nothing sold for after that.
Definitely, because he told them, didn't he tell them that they were going to keep going and he was going to do everything he could to keep, and then like that afternoon or like very shortly after he gave that speech, he like disappeared and closed.
It was right after the matinee. They went off to have their dinner break, and then they came back to the theater and the sign was up that they were closing.
If only he
could
have taken a lesson from Carrie to be nicer and more communicative.
I mean, like if he's closing the show, just say like, "I'm so sorry, guys, we can't do it. We're closing on Sunday." Like, here you go. Yeah, just how he did it was totally German. But but I do not think that the show was actually like gonna be a hit in the way that they were talking about it. I think that they were like sold out up until that Sunday, and then like the following Tuesday had 10 seats sold.
Yeah, no, it couldn't be. It couldn't be. But let's revisit. Yeah, so let's talk about In. So my feelings about In are also connected to my feelings about Dream On. So which is connected to the total overall of this show. I contain multitudes and I learn and grow as a person. And one time for a class assignment,
stupid.
Thank you. And I had to write a thing on like a best opening number for something. And I did it on Carrie for college. I was like, it must not have been that. I was in college like a year after Carrie. So I don't know if I was that tuned in, but for something, I was like, it's Carrie, it's In, it's an incredible opening number. It really sets up. And I have so much changed my mind. Like thinking, and this is like, I don't like that my brain does this, but I do think like, structurally and like story wise, like what would I do and blah, 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 or not even what would I do, but why isn't this moment working for me? I think that's what I do. Like, why isn't this moment working for me? And In to me, it's a great song. It is a toe tapper. There are some lyrics in it that I go, okay, sure, sing that. But
what if all my ends should split? What if all my ends should split?
It's a good moment to kind of, first of all, it's demonstrating that the bringing it to the modern age is not going to colloquially bring it to the modern age. They're going to bring it to wherever they want to, which is kind of this ambiguous space between the 80s and now, which I guess maybe I can't critique. Maybe that's the best way to go, is place it in never.
Place it in never.
But that song to me skews immediately. And you're going to be like, of course you're saying this. It's so in line with everything you said. Like the problem, which is this show is about Carrie being bullied and how people are bullies. And for Sue, she needs to interrogate and learn to change her behavior. For Chris, she is digging deeper into that hole, whether that's a coping mechanism or she's like unwell, it's about Carrie being bullied. That's undoubtedly what it's about. But to start the show by going, everyone has problems. We all have problems. We're all so sad and angry. We all have, undermines immediately what is what the point of the show is. Like, I don't need to know they all have problems. For the first long while of this show, kids are bullies. Kids terrorize each other. Kids are mean. And there's not some deeper emotional underbelly all the time of like issues at home or and sometimes there definitely is. Certainly in the case of Carrie, there is. You're about to see a demonstration of that, but by having all the students come on stage and be like, we have problems too. Like, I don't need that empathy at the start of the show. It's not going to help me with the point of the show or with Carrie. And so that frustrates me. Whereas Dream On to me is successful because, first of all, because the lyrics are interesting to Dream On. The lyrics are about like kind of what they wanted from relationships and what they're not getting, and how they want certain things from partners that they're not getting, and they're learning about, relationships and all that. And it also has that like 70s haze that the shower, it really captures that like shower scene haze in a really effective way. And I'm like,
it sounds like a shampoo commercial from the 70s, which is absolutely the way to go.
But that's the information that I wanted out of the opening number, which is they're all in community. These are the girls who are in community with each other. And there's some things they say to each other publicly, and there's some things they don't. And some of them are bullies and some of them are a little fucked up, and you can hear why, and because of some of the things that have happened to them, but it's all under this haze. Like they haven't quite figured out where their trauma comes from, and their trauma is kind of creeping in and kind of very like they'll say something really pleasantly and you'll hear it and you're like, oh, that's bad that you're being told that from your boyfriend. But like that feels right to me, that like they haven't fully figured out how to they haven't figured out some of the parts of their life are traumatic or contributing to their bullying and their behavior. And I think that's so effective. And so if I start the show there, which is obviously Dream On is cut, it's not in the revisal, but when I start the show there, I'm like, oh my gosh, if they could have just locked into that energy of these kids don't know they're like why they're doing this yet. And the ingredients are there, but they haven't put them together. Like it sets me up to listen, to hear them out, to like watch them as characters and understand that they're teenagers and they're fucked up and they're growing and changing. And also it sets up Carrie as so othered from them. She's not in this dreamlike haze. She's about to burst out of it covered in blood and yelling.
Covered in blood.
And the new, actually every version, although 88 they were dancing in the way they were, so it didn't feel very deep. Certainly in 2012, like that, like Carrie's not new to the energy there. Carrie hasn't brought a new energy in. We've already had that energy in the opening where they're all stamping about and being frustrated. So that is my feeling on In, and how it does not help the show structurally or character wise, but I like it listening to it.
Well, yeah. So there is a distinct difference between the original version of In and the revised version of In. Both songs technically are about the stress of high school, none of which has anything to do with actual academics. It has to only do with social pressure. The original version is taking place in the middle of a gym class because the movie opens on a gym class. And again, when I say like I love it for all the right and wrong reasons, I mean it, because like it is a toe tapper, especially the original version, because it's less angsty. It's truly like full-blown Broadway razzmatazz. Like the brass in that orchestra is just blaring, and the girls are belting their faces off while Debbie Allen is giving them the meanest choreography to do. She's like, what's the problem? What's hard? I do this all the time. I'm like, yes, Debbie Allen, you're a freak of nature. No one else can do what you can do.
That'll be the Debbie Allen musical, Freak of Nature.
I mean, all I have to do is watch her dancing in the West Side Story Tony performance to be like, oh, right, you're one of like a billion people.
Also, a full shout out to Christmas on the Square, which she
No, we cannot go down that road.
We have to say it, though. We have to say it.
Every day, I just pray. Every move I make is right. Where I go, who I know, how I wear my hair come Saturday night. And I worry, what is all my anxiousness? I worry, what can I possibly do?
It's all just very camp, and they're singing about, you know, the social pressures, but the lyrics are so shallow. Literally, the line I was quoting earlier, where I go, who I know, how I wear my hair on Saturday night, and I worry, what if all my ends should split? Like, it's that kind of shallow stress. And then they sing like, I go crazy. Debbie Allen also, by the way, literally has them on their stomachs pounding the floor on the crazy. I go crazy. Nobody cares what it does to me. Also, half the cast was British, half the cast was American. So all the R's are all over the place. And then you also have
that's why I couldn't concentrate at that point. I was like, there's too much to celebrate here.
So much to celebrate. And then on top of that, you have Miss Gardner, the gym teacher, who's supposed to be like the only person. They're channeling the movie where it's like she's the only person who gives Carrie anything resembling empathy, but her lyrics in originally are all about like, you gotta stay fit, you gotta stay thin. I mean, I love it because it's so fucking wild and incongruous with her character. But like when she goes, she has her whole bridge. Don't leave anything out. Keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Keep those muscles hot. Shame on you, overweight.
Shame on you, shame on you, overweight to sin. Make it so, keep those bodies thinking. Keep those bodies thinking. Keep those bodies.
on a musical level, it builds in a way where I'm like, yes, bitch, work. And then you listen to the lyrics and you're like, these are stupid, but yes, work. And then you watch the choreography and you're like, this is insane, but yes, work. Because everything doesn't work, but because nothing works, it all works in just a high camp way. And then how do they end the number with a giant pyramid with Carrie on the bottom? You better believe Carrie was not in this number, not one bit. She shows up at the very end to make it the pyramid, and then she ruins the pyramid, and everyone's like, Carrie. And as you were saying with Dream On, like, you don't need in to establish that Carrie is awkward. Like, Dream On is this very esoteric number, not esoteric, ethereal number, very light music. You said, like, you can hear almost the haze of the showers, like the moistness of everything in the music and the dreaminess with which the girls sing. And Stephen King talks about it in the novel, like, these are swans, and Carrie comes out looking like a frog. And the movie opens after the gym sequence in the showers of like all these naked bodies, which I feel like it's one of the few times in a movie where the female form is actually not exploited, in my opinion. I don't know how others feel about it, because it is meant to sort of show these women in their natural habitat of like the intimacy of female friendship in a safe space, like a locker room, where you just are yourself, you're open, you're exposed, and you just talk about whatever. And how Carrie is so at odds with the rest of that. You know, she showers away from them, and then how she also ruins the vibe with her traumatic experience.
She does kill the mood. That's true.
She is indeed a buzzkill with, her whole traumatic first period. But the revisal, which is what you were talking about, where it has the more American Idiot Spring Awakening vibes, where they add the whole like echoey harmony. They even do the fucking blah, blah, blah from Spring Awakening. And it's more angsty.
Both my folks, total jokes. All they do is chew my ass. They should just be glad I make it to class. I don't worry if I blow my SATs. I worry, what can I possibly do to squeeze in? How? Why not now? When will I?
And I think I actually think it dates the song more than the 80s version, because it is so 2008, 2009, blah, 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 I did chew my ass. And it's so whiny, and they're trying to make it darker and more serious. And I feel like it's a perfect opener to a show that works maybe even less than the original. It's maybe more consistent in tone, and maybe more of a compact story, a musical story, as evidenced by the fact that it's now done everywhere, but it's less interesting and goes against the grain of what makes the story work.
That's and I know that the team had really meaningful reasons for why they wanted to approach the story as they did. I know they talk about, being inspired. I think Stafford or even talks about being inspired by the story of a young gay student who was killed for giving a Valentine to another student, another male student. And so obviously like a meaningful topic, a meaningful thing to want to discuss. And this is how I feel about Jagged Little Pill as well. There are some stories that are just never going to be able to capture the intensity of the story you're approaching. And Carrie is not meant to capture the story that Stafford was described. Like Carrie, and this is what I love about the book and what really informs a lot of how I mostly talked about the 2013 film and mostly thought about the 2013 film, which really tries to modernize it in a way that 2012 the musical doesn't try to do in the revisal, because they don't do specific like, put it on your phone, put it on Instagram like 2013 does. But it's like a no man's land of sort of present day, sort of not. Yeah. But the book is so clear, and that it is about like the telekinesis is genetic. It spends so much time, maybe too much time, but so much time talking about the literal genetic, like mental part of telekinesis. It is a sci-fi horror film. It's not primarily a metaphor. I don't read the book and go, this is a metaphor for bullying, or this is, about bullying, because also we didn't have a lot of the kind of culture stuff that this is very much about a girl who's telekinetic and also in a terrible situation. But everything after wants to be a meaningful story of bullying and like a fabulistic, like, look how you're hurting this person. This is how people become violent. This is how students become violent. This is how we get to this place. And it sits wrong with me. I think that Carrie requires that very heavy horror element, that outside of fitting right into themes of today, because it's not meant to represent all of those things. It's not meant to carry that weight. It's not meant to be steeped in these emotional, like Sue at the end, or Sue throughout kind of the book, is like, I don't feel sorry that Tommy died. Like, she's like, it all feels so hazy. Like, she says she's sorry about what happened to Carrie, but she's not weighed down by these horrible lessons she learned really from the past. Like, it's about this terrible event in this town that was supernatural. Like, that's what Carrie is about. And all the themes of it that make it so special is the humanity. But they swap it and they make the humanity the forefront, and then everything else is a little bit, but then everything else doesn't even content-wise hold up. Like, everything else doesn't tell that story very well, especially now, because the music still sounds so, they didn't change a lot of the music. It still sounds so 80s. It still sounds, the writing doesn't keep up with how kids talk today. It doesn't get there, and it's trying so much harder than it did at first to get there, and falls behind, I think, substantially more because it set those pressures on itself to capture those really deep, human connective lessons learned in a way that it just shouldn't. I don't think it should.
No, well, so I've said this before, and it's I don't like works that try so hard to be universal, because they end up just being so bland. I think the more specific you make a story, the more universal it becomes. And like Carrie, the novel, and the 76 movie are very specific stories, and they've become the cultural phenomenons they are because of that. The blander you make something, the less you can, relate to it. The humanity of the novel is what keeps it from being a pulpy horror, and the horror is what keeps it from being a pulpy, beach read. It's this really interesting blend, and the novel, I think, is like 90% successful, as I think most good Stephen King novels are. Like, he always has adds an extra dose of something. We're like, that wasn't necessary. Like the whole Sue Snell possibly being pregnant at one point, it's a little extra. We don't need it. And the thing that the movie and the book do really well is that the telekinesis and the prom are intertwined, because the prom is this looming foreshadowing event that if you don't know the story, you just keep being told what happened. You're like, well, what happened? And then the telekinesis is almost sort of like this ticking time bomb, where you're like, this is becoming too much of a plot point, and it's too dangerous of a power to have for a girl who is clearly going to lash out any day now. Like, something's going to happen. The show doesn't have any of that tension, because it doesn't ever really build upon the telekinesis. Even the revisal, they add a little more, but not nearly enough. They push off the trick, the stunt with Chris. Like, she hints to Billy and do me a favor. She wants him to do something. Obviously, the original, we opened with Act 2 at the pig farm, Out for Blood. It's a simple little gig. You help me kill the pig. And they do a whole to-do about it, which is...
it's a very long song.
Honestly, all of these songs are long.
Yes.
But they cut that number and made it just like, they have hints of it in the revisal, but again, they don't ever really... they don't acknowledge it enough that there's tension about it. There's even in the movie, once they even go to the pig farm, once they set up the bucket, and Chris is teasing throughout the day to her friends, something's going to happen. Maybe I'll be here at the prom. It's all this tension that should keep the show from seeming like a schlocky, we all should just get along show. There's got to be that element to it to undercut it all. And I felt like the revisal was so determined, like you said, to make it can't we all just get along? Don't you know what happens when you bully? That what makes the story interesting is gone.
And they lean into things that are explicitly kind of not interesting. Like
the Sue Tommy shit. No one cares. No one fucking cares.
You're just Sue and Tommy, or certainly Tommy, God bless him, is never meant to be that interesting. And he serves his purpose. He's you feel like he's a real guy, but he's very, Sue and Tommy are very much figuring themselves out, and they're in love. But that's all you kind of know, is there these kind of kids who are like the only ones kind of questioning the status quo. They're the Troy and Gabriella, if you will. But they're not that, like, they're very peripheral. And so the musical's insistence on centering them, and like no performer can make them that interesting.
No.
Like you could put the best performers in those roles, and like everyone's, but like they're just like, You Shine, like by the time You Shine comes, I always am like, oh, that we have to go through You Shine. Like, I don't care how they feel. It's so unimportant how they feel about each other.
Again, because it's Carrie's story, and
Oh,
and everything should just relate to Carrie. It's always it should always come back to her, and more importantly, everything should come to a breaking point with the destruction. Like everything has to lead to that moment. And it was so clear watching the bootleg of that production. I also went through the message boards at the time last night to sort of like, what were people saying when this revival came out? The number of queens who were so angry that there was no blood on stage, that they didn't actually.
I also am that person.
Yeah, but what they
can do it if you can't pour blood.
Well, so yeah, well, a lot of people at the time were like, you don't do Peter Pan without the flying, and you don't do Carrie without the pig's blood. And it's true. It's part of the legacy of the show. And people who try to buck the trend, when you try to be different, you end up weakening the material. It's what we learned with the City Center Into the Woods. It was just a bunch of good actors just doing the damn show, and we're like, oh right, you don't need to like have an idea, you can just do this. It's a good show. But what they did was they doused the stage in red light, so Carrie was just covered in red light, and then she goes off stage after the destruction, and when she comes back on stage, she is covered in blood.
At least in one of them, they ducked off stage. Came back covered, like in that same moment.
Yeah. And the original production, they could never figure out how to make it work. They started with red light, and then they tried to figure it out. What they ended up doing was having Chris and Billy run on stage with a bucket of blood and pour it on her and then run off. Whereas in the novel and the film, it's a much more elaborate rigging system. It's like
two buckets too, yeah.
Well, the novel, it's 2 buckets, one for Carrie, one for Tommy. Tommy also gets covered in blood, and then the bucket hits him on the head and he dies. Obviously, it's really difficult to do that on stage. Not only to have the blood come from a specific point, but to show the audience the mechanical ingenuity that Chris and Billy had to come up with. Like the mental amount of brain power they put into this is insane. And it's really difficult to show that on stage, but you got to find something to do. It's got to be something. And if you can, you really can't do the show on stage.
And I was rewatching 2012 and I was like, because the problem isn't Molly, who's incredible. I have not a single note. She's doing a beautiful job.
She's doing a lovely job. She also sounds like Lindsay Haley when she sings. I'm like, girls giving the gays what they want. She knows that we want those R's gone. We want an open A for Carrie.
You have to, at that point, especially because the show is so long, you have to, at that point, see her see that violent act against her. It's an act of violence committed against her publicly, and you just don't see it. It's just not, she's just fine. She's just in a dress and she's killing people. And you're like, I could buy this more, perhaps if you were drenched in pig's blood. But you're just, it's so integral, not like even if the actors are at peak, because like, it's not even the effect of it. It's like, it's not, oh, we want to see how they do it. We want to see the splash of it. It's like, it's really a visceral act of violence against this young woman that causes this. Without it, you're like, well, I guess she has to do this anyway. But also kind of the flip of that, because it is a fine balance with this show. And that's the show's whole problem, is the dials maybe will never get tuned to what they need. But like, when the LA version, I saw the quote unquote immersive LA version, which what that really meant was if you paid a certain amount, you sat on bleachers on the stage and they sometimes moved you around or handed you something. It was not immersive. But
Preston has opinions, y'all.
We couldn't afford the bleachers, so we were not at all immersed in this immersive production. They did have cool like sets around the theater, but it was this $2 million production of Carrie that had wild stunts kind of continuously, or like enough that you were like, always wondering what the stunt would be. And the show just did not keep up. Like the content of the show became uninteresting into like, oh, what are they going to do next? And it wasn't even because I've seen the show and I'm familiar and I was waiting for the next thing. It just really shed light on like how unimportant You Shine is, because we were getting towards prom. Obviously, this production knew that was what we were kind of all waiting for. And at that point, I was like, this song is offering me nothing, nothing in this moment. These characters are offering me nothing. I just want to watch prom. And I was like, oh, the show itself, the humanity of the show itself has to keep up with the flash of it. Like the show has to be as interesting to watch as prom, whatever that means. And that's what I'm saying. Like, you can have no stunts at all. You can have the book on the string when you need to. You can push the chair when you need to. And that one moment can be so potent with the blood on, like, being spilled on her, even though it's very hard to do it, even when they try with the bucket. But like, that moment can be enough if the rest of the show is keeping up.
The thing to think about with the story of Carrie, when you think of those characters and what purpose they serve, if you're going to dramatize it, Carrie is the heart, Margaret is the danger, Chris is the violence, Sue is the plot device, and the gym teacher is sort of the reprieve. Like, she's the bit of breath we get of like, okay, not everyone is terrible. Sometimes we can like have an opportunity for kindness in this story, which is the one change I said earlier, like from the original movie that I liked that they did, was the gym teacher actually starts to have a connection with her, and it's nice. The novel is very just mean-spirited about humanity in general. Like, all the people who do anything nice to Carrie in the novel kind of do it to clear their own conscience, and they're like, I didn't really even like her. Like, she pissed. Like, Miss Garner, as you said earlier, like, it's her first year on the job and she doesn't like Carrie herself. She only kind of feels sorry for her when she realizes what's going on with her life. But yeah, that's what you kind of have to think about. Sue is not the protagonist. Chris, you cannot explain away her meanness. Like, Chris,
you can't give her a half a verse where she's like, but I'm sad too.
Yeah, well, so she had that song "It Hurts to Be Strong" in the original that they called the cigarette number. People went out to take their cigarette break during that song.
Right?
Sue, yeah, "It Hurts to Be Strong," and then
poor Sue.
Yeah,
no,
well,
go ahead.
It's hard to say because like, it's not the character, it's not even the actress. I think Amy Irving does a good job in the original movie. I think Christy Altomare does as well as she can in that revisal. You know, she doesn't have as much grit as I would like. Although I do like that at the beginning of the show, they do make Sue a bitch as well. You can understand why she and Chris are friends at first, because she's like, yeah, Carrie, and then
I've seen the LA Sue was pretty harsh. Like, she was leaning into she was not like backing down from that energy, and it was helpful for Sue. Yeah.
And there's a shot in the original when they're in the locker room where Sue like makes the decision to open up the Tampax dispenser to give everyone tampons to throw at Carrie. Like, she's not pure and good. What it is that it should be a turning point. Like, Sue was a mean girl, and she's recognizing the shittiness of her ways and sort of the smallness of her world. Like, she's not someone who's holier than thou. She's learned this is her moment where she's going to be better, and she's learning to be better, and that's her whole trajectory.
And that's what's confusing about the musical, is you never believe she participated in that. Like, I never believe, I have no idea who she was or how she behaved before the events of the musical. Like, and she's like, oh, I'm not like that anymore. And all of a sudden she's this entirely different person for the whole show. And
she's a wet carrot the whole show.
What I love about the book is like that. Yeah, I think that Sue is very genuinely affected by Carrie. I don't even think we're gonna have time to talk about queerness and Carrie, but
we've already talked for like almost 2.5 hours.
Queerness and Carrie is a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that we'll do that on the Patreon, Preston. We'll do that on Patreon.
Beautiful. Oh, perfect. I'm ready. Yeah. But Sue in the book is like questioning not only her relationship to that bullying instance, which was a really big turning point for her, but she's like, I see my whole life laid out in front of me. I see and Tommy participates in this too, and they dip into it a little in the musical, but only like to show they did. Yeah. Like, I see my whole life ahead of me, and Sue is like troubled by that. She's like, I'm going to get married. I'm going to go in this house. She's like listing how her life is going to go, and is like getting existential about it. And that's kind of why she's like, I need to break these patterns of how I'm behaving, but also to like what end, which I think is an incredible existential conundrum to be a teenager and to be experiencing. And we never see any of that from Sue, almost in any iteration. And Tommy's okay with it. Tommy's like, yeah, and I'll do this, and I'll live here, and I'll work here, and that's life. And I think that's what's so interesting about the characters, is how they've accepted their futures. Mm-hmm. And the musical doesn't give them that space. I don't think it lets them be those characters. I think Dreamer in Disguise, God help us, is like the closest they get to kind of being like, oh, they're not quite who you expect. They're not who you expect, but you're like, but how aren't they who I expect? And I would love to hear more from like Sue, who's like, I'm scared of knowing exactly how my life is going to go. That's terrifying.
I don't think I need to hear more from Sue. I just need to hear differently from Sue.
In the queer podcast, we need to hear more from Sue.
She already has so much stage time in the new version. I just think that it's not well spent, especially because they now also they take from the novel the idea that this is all happening as a flashback for Sue. She's being interrogated after the events of what happened.
Yeah,
we want to know what happened at the night of the prom, and she talks us through it at the beginning, and then like she'll pop in every now and then with a narration. And because it is from her perspective, now it is becoming the Sue show. So like I get that, but that's the thing, is like the novel isn't just from Sue's perspective. Like when people are being interrogated, like Miss Desjardins is also interrogated. Other like not everyone died in the gymnasium in the novel. Some of them got to escape. Although Chris and Billy do die by trying to run over Carrie. Carrie does also kill like 75% of the town in the novel and in the 2002 movie version, whereas in the movie and in the stage show, she just kills everyone inside the gym. But also like something that the show and the stage show, neither version of the stage show ever fixes, is like how to handle the after the prom. I don't think they handle the blood pouring well. They don't handle the destruction super well. I don't love this like regurgitation of the score in Carrie's head, very like Epiphany and Sweeney Todd in 90 Seconds, where she's like going through Andy was weak. I remember how those boys could dance, and then going into doesn't anyone think that I hear? And then she starts killing everyone. I'm like, I feel like it's almost scarier not to know what's going on in her brain, that like something is sort of shut off. Something that the original movie does really well is once the blood pours, all sound pretty much goes away except for the sound of the blood dripping and the bucket clanging. Because that's all that's going on in Carrie's head, and she snaps, and what's she's seeing is not exactly what's there, and that's what channels, you know, the rage in her and the vengeance. And there's got to be something other than just like she's having a musical mental breakdown. You know? Yes,
especially because it's so descriptive in other and like it's so much the pinnacle of like. For some versions, it's like where the horror, like people are sitting here going, like, why am I watching this? And then they're like, oh, okay, fine, here's the horror, especially in 2013, where it's like Final fucking Destination level violence. But
my God.
something that I do kind of love, I don't agree with this choice. I understand why it's made, but like they soften virtually everything. They soften virtually every intention in the musical and make everyone like, you know, kinder and more introspective. But I imagine just because they couldn't make the bucket fall on Tommy, like logistically, Carrie kills him. It's the only iteration of Carrie is the musical is where Carrie kills Tommy, because normally the bucket hits his head and he's out and he dies in that way. And in some iterations, she recognizes that and she goes, this is bad. This was unfortunate. And in some, she kind of moves on and you can maybe assume, okay, she like, maybe she thought, you know, he was in on it maybe, and that's why she's not super bummed by it, but she never kills him. She's never like, fuck you. So I like that, like in that one moment in the musical, she just suddenly, and she kills, I think she kills Gardner too.
She kills Gardner in two of the three movie versions. In the original, and it's a whole point in both versions. She does kill Gardner in the musical. You're right. She does kill Tommy in the musical, because the whole thing about the bucket clanging Tommy's head is Tommy was never supposed to die from the prank. And they make it very clear in the original movie, like he obviously had no idea what was going on. He's like calling it out, and not everybody laughs at her in the original movie. Only a handful of people, but that channels through Carrie's brain as everyone laughing. Whereas in the novel, I think everyone laughs in the novel, but a lot of it's actually just due to pure shock of like, Jesus Christ, what just happened? And the fact that Tommy dies is sort of like the last moment of mourning for Carrie, because it's like the last person in her brain who was nice to her. Now he's dead. the fuck happens now? Like it all just becomes too much. It's one step too many. And yeah, they can't really handle that on stage nearly as well.
What you're talking about is like the destruction is just not long enough. She immediately goes into this song and immediately kind of kills everyone, unless you're in Dubai, and then they do a 3-minute EDM sequence, which is incredible and everyone should do. But there's two options with if you get any space to breathe in the destruction, which I think is important, which is like in 2013, certainly like she spends a lot of time being like, oh my God, Tommy's dead. This is horrible. You killed him. And that's part of it. And she's upset that Tommy's dead. And then there's the other, she assumes that he was in on it, I guess. Like I can like imagine that. But like when you have no time to deal with any of it, like, you don't get to live in those different moments of decision-making that build up to why she reacted like she did. And why it's obviously enough that pig's blood like fell on her head, I guess. But yeah, like to kill Tommy.
They
didn't need to do
Wait,
it.
did you ask why pig's blood?
No, I said I know that that's a traumatic event that can trigger some anger. But like so much of it is her relationship to, not so much of it, but her relationship to what happens to Tommy is an important part of her emotional landscape in that moment. And to just have her, even without any discussion at all, be like, fuck you.
So I feel like I've talked about this before. No, I have talked about this before. The movie Titanic, the famous movie that we all know and love. It's an over 3-hour movie, and the ship doesn't hit the iceberg, I think, until like hour 2. And you think at the time, like, God, why is this movie so long? Like, let's get to the iceberg. It's important to have those 2 hours, so when the iceberg hits, we've already gotten to know half of these characters. We know their inner lives, so we get a sense of what's being lost, what's at stake, and all that build up to the prom, in addition to the tension building, it's important to, see everyone's connection to Carrie, of Miss Gardner Collins being nice to her, of her and Tommy actually getting along that evening, and him like giving her first kiss because it's like just the nice thing to do. So when he dies, we feel the same pain that Carrie feels of like this really, maybe he wasn't like the most interesting boy in the world, but he was a nice boy. He was sweet and he was smart. And all the things that could have gone her way, that were starting to go her way, that just got ripped apart because, as you said, this act of violence, and it's in a society that will not let Carrie White win because she was never born to win. It's just so, it makes it heartbreaking and traumatic and horrifying, and not justifies her actions, but you're not sitting there going like, I don't get why she's acting this way, at least in like the novel and the movies. You sit there like, listen, I would not go this far, but like also, I don't know. Like if I was tormented as many years as I was, as Carrie White was, with the home life that I have, and then fucking pig's blood thrown on me, and the only moment of happiness I've had in years, I don't know, maybe I'd snap too. I don't know.
That's why I also and this is so hard to talk about because it is nuanced, but I also think it's just a flaw in how so many people have tried to adapt this. And maybe in the future, a flaw in how I try to adapt it. It's like people want it to be a metaphor for the kid who is bullied and then retaliates.
Yeah.
However, like there's a lot of decision making, and that's why decision making of the destruction is important. Like there's a lot of decision making that goes into how we see violence enacted on, certainly in schools. Like there are choices that are made in advance usually, and in Carrie, that's just not the situation. That's just not. That's why the 2013 it's an instance of like supernatural energy and this and she can harness all that in an instant, and she's making, so that's why I get so frustrated. I'm like, she's not someone not the metaphor you're looking for. She's like harnessing superpowers and is out of control of that. Like it's just a different thing. It's a horror movie. It's not a metaphor.
Another thing I want to say, so connecting all this back, I mentioned this in the Smile episode when I say like teenagers' brains are not fully formed yet. They have a lot of agency. They are more aware and they are in more control of their actions, but they're not fully developed human beings yet. And then I mentioned this with the West Side Story remake, like the way that Tony Kushner tried to kind of overly explain everyone's actions in a way that I was like, these are horny, angry teenagers. They are not always thinking clearly, which is to say, something that I've always said when people try to like poke holes in the logic of certain characters' actions in movies and TV shows and plays, I always say sometimes people act irrationally. just, happens from time to time, especially when you're a teenager and you've got all the hormones raging left and right. You're Carrie White. You got telekinetic powers. You're covered in pig's blood. You're Chris Hargensen. You're about to become the female Patrick Bateman of the 80s. And like just everything is going on all over the place. You're not always acting in a way that makes logical sense. And even when you're thinking about what you're doing, it may not make logical sense to someone else. Like it only makes sense in the craziness that is your teenage brain.
Doesn't anybody ever get it right? Doesn't anybody think that
Carrie has horror in it, and people forget that. They're like, no, it's a story about a girl who needs love and about bullying. It's about how religions are false. And like those things are in there, but it's also a horror story with telekinesis.
And I like the question kind of, I think ultimately is, can it ever work? Can it ever work as a musical? And I think the answer for me is if like, because I ask myself this, not in any sort of like truly just because I'm allowed to ask myself questions in my brain. I'm like, could I do it? Could I figure it out? And I'm like, the answer to me is, I don't know if I could figure it out, but it's to start at the beginning. I think Eve Was Weak should stay in many ways. I like that song so much, but to start at the beginning and to lean into the horror and the specificity and to stay away from the metaphor, because you're never going to be able to capture the immediacy and the horror of the real life themes people are trying to capture in that show. And I think that's what really unsettles me. And I think I really realized that in 2013 is like, it's not meant to do that. Don't make it do that. It cannot do justice to telling the stories we're experiencing now. To try to look at what we're experiencing now through this frame is not going to feel good. It certainly doesn't feel good to me because we're trying to synthesize a very real thing through a very fictionalized lens. And that can be helpful. Sometimes I don't think it's helpful in the case of this story. I think it works against it. So I'm like, start at square one, go back to the source material, lean into anger, really lean into lore. I think, and I know that they tried to in 88 add a scene potentially where you saw the birth of Carrie. And I'm like, maybe not that much into lore. I heard that today from something I was watching, probably Out for Blood. I was listening to Out for Blood today.
They were the Out for Blood podcast. Yeah. Well, so that goes into where this series is often talked about is the legacy of these shows. We've talked about both different versions of the movies and all that stuff. The reason why Carrie is on this series is because for a show that only ran 5 performances, was critically maligned, only won 1 award, which was a Theatre World Award for Lindsay Haley, justly deserved. She was 17. She belted her face off, and Betty Buckley got an Outer Critics Circle nomination. The show has had a life that a lot of shows that have run 100 times longer than Carrie could only wish to have. Talked about forever, the centerpiece of the book, Not Since Carrie, then gets, a revisal, which is now done all over the place. An episode of Riverdale about it, has a podcast out for, I know. That Riverdale episode. So stupid. And then on top of that, we have the podcast Out for Blood. Like, this is a show that has such lore about it. And there is a mystique about it. And despite the fact that neither version works for very different reasons, and then work for different reasons as well, it's an opportunity, I think, that always fascinates people, because it's the story itself is so good and so ripe for dramatization that you think to yourself, a musical this should work, especially as something like Eve Was Weak, which for the most part really does nail the assignment. Probably the only moment of the show that completely nails the assignment. And part of why the show is so uneven is because, like, again, if you talk about how do you come back from that, the opportunity is so good that people are always just kind of wanting to get their hands on it. You being another example of this.
I being an example, but I feel, and I feel like I don't have anything to offer other than, but even a musical, even a movie adaptation is tricky for me, because I would kind of be contingent on me being able to write more music for it, because I don't feel that the music, like, I feel like According to Chris is not a helpful villain song. I feel like If You Don't Listen Then You're Jerks is not a great threat. I feel like it's just like rife with unspecificity and it's kind of goofy. And so like I can't
It's also just a bad song too.
Oh, I'm trying to stay nice for anyone.
Gore and Pitchford have written good songs in the past. That was not one of them.
According to Chris, is a toe tapper once again, but it is lyrically a juggernaut. But I feel like what is so attractive about Carrie over and over, time and time and again, is we're always in high school, we're always suffering. The metaphor does work. Like the metaphor is always on a level going to be appealing to someone, to people, to put their own experiences into it. It's just a very good container for that. And I think you have the success of the book, you have the success of the film. It's a wildly successful property in general. Then we're very fascinated by flops as a culture. We love failure. And then we're also very fascinated by horror theater. Like we want horror theater to work. I think everyone's always trying to figure out horror. And then you love a show that's successful for high schoolers. So to me, it just has so many independent ingredients that mean it will never die. And like people will always be working on it and people will always want to do it. There's just too much about it that's too fascinating and appealing, for better and worse, like equally. And I think that's why like when 2012 happened, and like, well, it's I wouldn't even say fixed enough, but it kind of, the purpose was to make it licensable. And they did that. They certainly did that. And it certainly happened. And yeah, like now, like I wouldn't be able to approach the property personally as it is, because it doesn't check out to me. Like I couldn't work my way through it exactly as it stands. But that's the way my brain works. Like I think if I was a theater student, I would kill to do it. If I was looking for shows for a high school to direct, I would kill to do it, just because you want it to work so badly. Yeah. And at this point, you can kind of get around what's on the page.
Preston, we honestly could keep talking, and we've talked about so much, and I feel like there's so much more we could talk about.
Keep talking,
but we're not going to, because I don't even know how much I'm editing out. Just so everyone knows, no matter how long this episode ends up being, just know Preston and I spoke for 3 hours, possibly 3 hours and change. So whatever length this is, just know that it was longer, and this is without any music added in or anything. So like obviously whatever the final product will be, it's going to have like 5 to 6 minutes worth of like clips of music.
And I didn't even talk about Dubai that much. I was trying to see, is there anything that I like desperately wanted to bring up that I didn't? No, I didn't.
I think
everything is here.
Yeah, honestly, we could talk about it more, and I think what we might end up doing is doing a further discussion on the Patreon at one point. But I want to ask you a couple of questions. Okay. We already hinted at this a bit, but I want concrete final answers. 3 final answers in regards to Carrie. 1, over, under, or estimated. Do you think the show is overestimated, underestimated, or properly estimated?
I think it's overestimated now.
I think that the revisal is overestimated. I think the original production is properly estimated. I don't think anyone looks at it. I take that back. Also overestimated. I was about to say, I don't think anyone looks at the original as a misunderstood masterpiece. I'm like, the writers do. The writers think that they were screwed. I'm like, not everything you guys wrote was great.
I think there's a lot going on. I think the property is just too difficult to work. And I think that people kind of settled on the 2012 reimagining as definitive, and really cherish that. And I wish them well. But I still think there's a lot of issues with it that keep it from being the full story that Carrie like needs to be successful.
This is why we're friends. I wish them well, because you and I are so good at being bitchy in the same way. It's like, I hope you had fun up there. I'm so glad. Whenever I have young listeners sometimes who they don't come for me, but they'll say to me, you kind of talk shit about this one show, and I actually really love it. It was a big moment of my childhood. I'm like, I love that for you. I'm so glad it brought you joy.
Oh God, yeah.
I don't want to take that away from you.
Speaking of the young people who maybe don't like me, I understand when I talk about these things that like Tigers is not perfect. I will also say it's a very different situation. I get like, because people could be like, how can you criticize another show when like your show, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, because I can. And because I think about flaws in my own show as well.
I've mentioned it so many times before. I'm going to keep talking about it. Guys, toxic positivity is awful. And it's honestly poisoning the theater community. We should be able to talk about things in a constructive way. I think it's really difficult to talk negatively about something in a way that people will actually listen and absorb. And I don't think you and I said everything negatively in a way that people will be like, that was constructive. Sometimes we were a little shady, but I do think we had really lovely talks about the things that don't work and why and how to make it better or what couldn't be better.
And that's why I'm like, when I think about adapting these things, I'm like, oh, I'm not getting in the way of myself in terms of ever meeting with any of these creators one day by pointing out what I have questions about and like what doesn't work for me. Because then I'm like, if they are compatible with what I think, then that's only going to work. If they're not, then it's not going to work, and that's fine.
Listen, y'all. Go back to the Sondheim series I did with Preston and listen to the Roadshow episode. That is the last work Stephen Sondheim had produced, and it did not go great. He still released Look, I Made a Hat and Finishing the Hat, where he shits on a lot of very revered lyricists. And that this is someone who, like, yes, has seen the greatest heights of success, but also like has had the lowest. And he's like, listen, my last New York show didn't do great. I'm still gonna sit here and tell you that Cole Porter was a hack. It's
we should have started with that. Then I would have gone buck wild.
Absolutely. Next question is the missing link. What do you think is most missing from Carrie that would really help click things into place? Which is a very hard question for this show because there's a lot, but
really grounded character songs that really have to do with how they feel in the moment, like kind of going away from some of the poetry, kind of going away from and letting them be messier and letting them be more complex and letting it not be so easy to capture their emotions, like When There's No One or whatever Sue is trying to sing, or the song Carrie, like going a little like not needing to tie up loose ends and letting them be complicated and not having any good guys or heroes or villains.
Yeah. I think there's a difference between humanizing someone and softening them. Softening means you're trying to make them more likable. Humanizing just means you're not coming at them one-dimensionally. You're giving them complexity, but that complexity doesn't mean they have to be a good person.
Wait, can I tell you my favorite thing about Carrie? And then if you know the answer to this, that'd be very helpful to me. So in the cast album of 2012, there's the line in Do Me a Favor where she goes to Sue's going to Tommy and she's like, what should I do? And he's like, look, Sue, don't be so hard on yourself. I can tell you to keep your mouth shut, but want to know what I advise? And she goes, what? And he goes, apologize. And she goes, apologize, Tommy, that's genius. So that is in the album. And it's in many of the iterations.
That's not Do Me a Favor. That's a different song.
Oh, no, that's not true. That's according to Chris. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh my God. If only we could edit this. My brain definitely like looked through Do Me a Favor for that moment today. But okay. So then according to Chris, that happens. And then in some iterations of it, he goes, apologize. And she goes, apologize. Oh my God, Tommy, I'm such an idiot. And I love that because I listen to that one so often where she goes, apologize, Tommy, that's genius. And I go, you just made Sue sound like the daftest girl ever. Like she's never heard of an apology. She's shocked by the existence of it. But there are some versions where she goes, of course, apologize. Yeah. Like, what was the consistency here? Because it's not the one, that's not the one that rose to the top. The one that rose to the top was Tommy, that's genius.
Yeah. And not that like I'm such an idiot is perfect, but it is so much it's like a small change that is such wildly better because it's like Sue acknowledges, why didn't I think of that? Oh my God, I'm a dum.
It kills me. We don't need to keep that in the pot. I just really that line every time I go, girl, you know what an apology is.
What was the word again? Apologies. How do you say that? I'm not familiar. I don't understand the question and I won't respond to
Ariel didn't have legs. That's why she couldn't remember the words surrounding them. You have access to apologies.
She literally says, what do you call them? Oh, feet. And people are like, why didn't she just write it in the sand? I'm like, how is she going to learn how to spell feet? She barely remembered the word. They're like, well, she signed her name. I'm like, yeah, she's just like some people marked X for signatures in the 1920s. Ariel knows how to sign her name. She don't know how to spell feet. Come on.
Justice for Sue Snell. Justice for Sue Snell. The girl who forgot apology.
Who forgot what an apology was. I think that's our advice to anyone who's playing Sue in a production of Carrie. In the same way Sondheim told Anna Kendrick when she was doing Cinderella, he's like, she talks to birds. We're like, listen, Sue didn't know what the word apology was until today.
Apologize. Oh, Tommy, that's genius.
And the last question is Castaway. Who would you like to see in a production of Carrie?
Oh my God. You know what? Yeah. I felt like I knew you'd ask this. And the only person I kept coming back to was like Renee Rapp's Chris Hargensen would probably be very effective.
Yeah. Ooh, I
But
love
also,
that.
I did send you this video. I don't know if you watched it. Julia Lester.
I did.
She has played Carrie, and she is fucking fantastic.
Just-
I've only seen that
she's-
minute, but she killed that minute
Yeah.
so much that I was like,
Julia
"Perfect."
Lester, who I saw in Into the Woods and was so good.
I'll be seeing her in July. Okay, I also am very curious about your Margaret because I just went like, we went through this a little bit with like Gypsy, and I feel like the Rose to Margaret pipeline is like
It's a short pipeline.
equal.
Yeah.
But I also like, I don't know. I was like, is this the moment? Like Lindsay Haley's When There's No One is gorgeous. And I'm like, oh, it'd be just fun to like have her play the role. I think she's I don't know if she's the right age now.
That's
she
like
could
Margaret.
It'd be fine.
Margaret is technically like about 40, maybe even like a little younger than that, because Carrie's supposed to be 16. Margaret probably had her on the younger side. So, but we're also talking like, depending on what time period you want to set the show in, 70s, 80s, also like the craziness of Margaret, maybe it ages her in a bit. We tend to cast women in their late 40s, early 50s in the role. I know she played Miss Gardner off Broadway, but I would love to see Carmen Cusack do Margaret.
Beautiful. Or Sally Ann. Sally Ann could do. Although, wait.
I don't think Sally Ann has the voice anymore for it. I love her dearly, but I don't think the voice is quite what it used to be.
I saw The Last Ship with her, and I just loved every minute of it, but I was not thinking about her range in that.
Rachel Tucker, speaking of Last Ship, I love
Rachel Tucker.
Rachel Tucker, I like to hear her Margaret White.
I think, okay, here, the Julia Lester, Renee Rapp, this performer I just saw in Little Shop, and every choice she made was unexpected in a glorious way. So I'm going to nominate Tammy Blanchard, who I think could just play that role unlike any I've ever seen or could possibly imagine. And I'm very interested in that. I don't know what she was told to get Audrey on stage. I don't know how that collaboration worked to put that performance on stage, but it was enchanting.
I still need to see her in it. I love Tammy Blanchard very much, and
I've
heard such divisive things about her Audrey to the extent that I'm like, I must see it.
You have to go. Because I can understand what I loved about it is I so rarely see a very talented performer, because she's very talented. So like whatever she does, it's going to come out fine. Like she's going to be able to sing it fine. It's going to work. But like, really, I just was like, I can't anticipate a single moment of what you're about to do. And to me, that was very exciting to watch. And for this show, I don't need, you to give me the purest, most earnest performance.
But that's the key to Margaret. Margaret, you should never know exactly how Margaret's going to react or what she's going to do or say. It's what makes Piper Laurie so so scary in the original. Like at any moment, something could do it. And
that's like, I love Marin's performance so much, but she is so tender. Like she's a tender, like she loves, like you can see in her face that she's trying to protect Carrie, and Betty, I don't know that that's the case. And I do enjoy that kind of like, this is just the energy in the household. Like this is just the energy.
Betty, Betty, I think, is the only one who comes close to Piper Laurie's version. And part of that comes with the sort of distance and almost disdain of her daughter. Betty's version of Margaret also it's the design of her character. They dress her up very fashionably. Her Margaret is more like ice queen who will sometimes become like Bible thumping. But for them, like, she's not such a loose cannon, but she is very cold. Marin's is more of a woman, and Marin is was such a phenomenal talent, and I think she was capable of going that big. I don't think that was the vision for that revisal in that production. But I need a big old Margaret. I need someone who's gonna fucking chew your head off.
I'm gonna be thinking, okay, oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I mean, we have some good options here. Tammy Blanchard, actually, I think 22 years ago would have been an interesting Carrie. I think she would have done a really good job with the wallflower, becoming beautiful, becoming telekinetic monster, tearing up the town.
I want a fearsome Carrie. Like, I don't want Carrie to feel hopeful. I want that song. I want that song to be very clearly kind of tricking you. Okay. I want Carrie to feel powerful and not like cute in that moment.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Like, make her a little scarier. Why not?
Yeah, well, there's got to be a reason that everyone hates her. It doesn't have to necessarily be logical, but there's got to be something about her that's a little off-putting, and which makes her difficult to root for as a protagonist. Sissy Spacek made it very easy, and that's not a flaw. That's just that was a very specific vision that they had, and it works in the world of that movie.
But that's why we come back to. We keep coming back to this. It is so complicated. That's why it works for the fact that is a horror movie. It is a 70s horror movie. It is not a commentary on today and the violence of today. Because what Carrie asks you to do when it's a commentary is it's that 13 Reasons Why thing of you're all responsible for this girl's actions against you. Like you're bullying, push this girl to this place, and she could have been this nice girl who had this bright future. We're like, also, no, Carrie bears some responsibility for the violence that she enacts on people. Like she bears responsibility for her violent thoughts. And I want to, especially if you're going to try to show me that metaphor, that needs to be part of it, because the idea of you did this to her is, I think, a fairly gross way to present the metaphor.
But it makes it very villain victim. I think that the percentage of blame is very much leaning in favor of the students, by which I mean to say, like, the majority of the blame, I would say, goes to them. But no, like, Carrie does have to take responsibility. She makes a choice. She murders quite a few times that night. But again, like, it never is like one thing is just the one thing. Everything is connected in some way. So it's not as if to say, Carrie was absolutely innocent. The book is very much about, there is something about her that's off. Yeah. It's a little Voldemort-y when people always talk about like Tom Riddle as a child. They're like, there was always something about him I just couldn't understand. It's like, it's the fact that he had no soul. But Carrie wasn't that. It was like there's just something off with Carrie. Not that she's not like
compatible with her mother.
not that she's like, not that it's a villain origin story necessarily. But more that Stephen King is like, there has to be something in her that makes the rampage make sense. Like if there's no seed of anger, then it comes out of nowhere that she kills everybody, but it's got to be there. And even the movie where, Sissy Spacek is just like so sweet. They do have moments where she's alone and like, there's some scary stuff, like the thing with the mirror, like they have flecks of Carrie is capable of violence. She throws a kid off his bike. It's great.
Those like, I need those moments in the musical. And she does it, but she only does it when Billy's bullying her, is when she like kind of pushes, like she only does it like show me that she loves coming into her power to a degree in the book.
Yeah.
Like I want to see spicy Carrie.
Great. Spicy Carrie. All right. That's going to be our revisal. Well, those are our 3 questions. Preston, this has been lovely. Thank you so much for recording.
Anytime.
Preston, where can people find you if you want them to find you?
They can find me at Preston Max Allen on everything. I think that's my handle for everything.
On absolutely everything. If you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram at Matt Koplik, usual spelling. If you like the podcast, you can give us a nice 5-star rating, review, subscribe to it. I just found a new rating. So there is a website that I was asked to join from Pushkin Podcasting called Chartable. Never heard of it before, but I found 2 reviews. Well, 1 review, and then I found a second one right before we recorded this episode. And I just need to find it because I want to read it, give this person their due. Unfortunately, it doesn't show up on Apple, and it really makes me sad. Apple only shows the reviews that are posted in the country that you're in. So yeah, just the ones that are written in America. Anyway, because this one is from Canada. David Loach on May 26th wrote, funny and wise, 5 stars. Oh, sorry, hon. Cue the Light in the Piazza music. 5 stars, funny and wise, exclamation point. Matt Koplik knows Broadway, exclamation point. He discusses each musical with an impressive depth of knowledge, passion, insight, and especially humor. Whether you are new to the musical being discussed or if you know it intimately, Matt reveals details and nuances that will enhance your appreciation of the show. Sure, he's opinionated, but heck, I wouldn't have it any other way, especially because he's usually right. 2 exclamation points. Usually right. I'm often right. I think I'm often right. And if I'm not, I opt up to it. I love being proven wrong when it comes to theater. I love it when people change my mind. It's a wonderful sensation. Doesn't happen often, but when it does, I always smile. I'm like, ooh, what a fun moment.
I'm dying to be, if you ever facilitate like conflicting opinions, throw me in. I'm very ready to openly talk about Evan Hansen, The Prom, and Jagged Little Pill. Those are the 3 that I will go on record as being like, there's some questions here.
Would love to discuss Evan Hansen with you. Jagged Little Pill. Preston, I have absolutely nothing nice to say about that show. Not one bit. I hope they had a lot of fun making it.
I think the thing I'll say, just to briefly sum up my opinions on where they stand now, is that I just hope that it's not a show that will be available to high schools to do. I really hope.
I hope it just never goes around. Yeah, I just hope it's never around.
From kids having, obviously this can, I do know, I've been very bold about how I feel about it. But yeah, that's one where I'm like, don't let high schoolers do that one. Don't let them, don't put them through that.
I mean, I would just love it if the show just went away.
It won't.
Not in this day and age of social media and fandom and cult culture, as we've been discussing with this podcast, nothing ever goes away. But I just don't want it around anymore. Anyway, that being said, Preston, been so delightful. Everyone check us back next week when we cover Sideshow with Gunkle of the pod, Adam Ellsbury. As you know, Preston.
Underscoring the
thank you so much. You need to do I want mine, where is mine?
I only know those two songs, the two famous songs.
Of course you do. Well, then it'll be a perfect episode.
Why do you say, of course you do? Like, I don't know musicals.
No, I'm just, if you were to tell me I only know two songs from Sideshow, I'm like, of course you know the two big ones.
Okay, that's fair. Fair. Thank you for specifying.
You don't know I'm Daisy, I'm Violet. Anyway,
I saw that show, but I don't remember.
Well, the reason why you don't remember the revival is for many reasons, and we'll get into all of that in the next episode. As I said,
what a good preview for that.
Oh yeah, as I said, we'll talk about it next week. As you know, Preston, we close out every week with a Broadway diva, and even though I think she only did the one Broadway show, she's been on the West End a bunch. I think it's a good opportunity for us to include Miss Lindsay Haley. Don't you?
Oh, we must include Miss Lindsay Haley.
Yes, we've already done Miss Betty. We've even done Barbara, but we haven't done Lindsay. And unfortunately, Piper Laurie never did a musical. Otherwise, I would do Piper Laurie.
I have a lot of energy, I think, now and in the future for celebrating Lindsay Haley, and I hope our paths cross one day.
As do I. I think she's wonderful. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next week for Sideshow. And in the meantime, here's Lindsay. Bye.